Although the two young men were surprised by Duan Lingtian's age, one of them still walked out to welcome Duan Lingtian into the Ancient River Trading Company's branch. Please follow me. Thank you. Duan Lingtian lightly nodded and followed. Little brother, are you really a 7-star sword sect inner court disciple? The young man that brought Duan Lingtian in asked with slight hesitation. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. You wouldn't be like Zhao Lei and think that I'm in disguise, right? If I was in disguise, would I come here to walk right into a trap and meet the two elders of the 7-star sword sect? That's true. The young man came to a sudden understanding. He didn't feel that Duan Lingtian had such great courage, and at the same time, he asked with a strange gaze. You encountered your 7-star sword sect's inner court disciple Zhao Lei earlier? Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. When you encountered him, was he wearing clothes? The young man asked. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. The young man's interest was instantly aroused, and he approached Duan Lingtian and asked in a low voice. I saw Zhao Lei return with a bear but earlier. Did you see who stripped off all his clothes? I saw. Duan Lingtian nodded once more. Besides the crowd of spectators outside the ancient city of Everlast earlier, there was probably no one that was clearer than him about this matter. Who? The young man's gaze lit up and his interest was aroused. He himself. Duan Lingtian spoke slowly. He himself? The young man was stunned, and he had an expression of disbelief. Right when the young man recovered from his shock and wanted to get to the bottom of it. It's you. Kid, you actually dare come to the Ancient River Trading Company's branch. Do you really think you can deceive my father and Elder Fengping? A voice that contained extreme rage sounded out abruptly. It was Zhao Lin who changed into the 7-star sword sect's inner court disciple's attire, and he stood in the distance as he glared angrily at Duan Lingtian. Zhao Lin's gaze was extremely gloomy as it descended onto Duan Lingtian, and he said in a low voice. Not to mention you pretended to be a 7-star sword sect disciple, you actually dared to walk right into a trap. This time you won't be able to escape even if you grow wings. Pretended to be a 7-star sword sect disciple? The young man from the Ancient River Trading Company that brought Duan Lingtian in went grim, and his figure flashed out to avoid Duan Lingtian as if he was avoiding the god of plague. You're not a 7-star sword sect disciple? The young man looked vigilantly at Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian smiled lightly and shrugged. Didn't I tell you earlier this Zhao Lei thinks I'm pretending? Truly laughable. If I was pretending, why would I walk right into a trap here? Duan Lingtian's words caused the young man to feel courteous, and he hurriedly looked at Zhao Lei. Humph. Zhao Lei grunted coldly. Who knows if you have some sort of scheme? Let me tell you before Zhao Lei, your wishful thinking won't work. Is that so? Duan Lingtian sized Duan Lingtian up from top to bottom, and the corners of his mouth curled into a ridiculing smile. Zhao Lei, I'm extremely curious. Could it be that you don't have any other clothes within your spatial ring? Besides that, I only asked you to take off your clothes and enter the city in your birthday suit. I wouldn't have any objections if you put on your clothes after entering the city, but I never imagined that you actually threw your clothes outside the city and didn't want them. When he spoke up to hear, Duan Lingtian pretended to sigh. When Duan Lingtian's words entered into Zhao Lei's ears, it caused Zhao Lei to feel as if he was struck by lightning, and his face went ghastly pale and even became savage. Kid, don't be complacent. Now, since you dare walk right into my trap, then don't think of leaving. I really didn't think of leaving. Duan Lingtian looked at Zhao Lei with a calm expression as he spoke in disdain. Duan Lingtian's reaction slightly exceeded Zhao Lei's expectations. For a moment, his heart couldn't help but sink. Could it be that he's really a 7-star sword sect disciple? This thought suddenly emerged within Zhao Lei's heart. After this thought arose, it was difficult to restrain. After calming his heart, Zhao Lei recalled. This young man was in existence that was able to defeat him. Although he couldn't be considered to be strong amongst the 7-star sword sect inner court disciples, he was a 3rd-level nascent soul stage martial artist at any rate, whereas this young man looked to be around 22 years old at most. Being able to defeat him at such an age showed how monstrous his natural talent was. Could it be that such a monstrous genius has actually appeared in the sect after I haven't returned to the sect for a few years? Zhao Lei's heart trembled. No, It can't be. He's surely not a seven-star sword sect disciple. Surely not. When he thought up to here, Zhao Lei panicked, completely panicked. He panicked not because of the matter of him tearing apart the sect leader's handwritten letter in Duan Lingtian's hand earlier. That matter was only a small matter to him. He panicked because if this young man was really a seven-star sword sect disciple, then after his father found out about the sequence of events, he might not help him teach the young man a lesson. It was impossible for him to let the matter of today go. Zhao Lei, what's going on? An indifferent voice sounded out from afar, and it drew Duan Lingtian's gaze. Under Duan Lingtian's gaze, a middle-aged man in azure clothes slowly walked over. The middle-aged man's footsteps were steady, and his cultivation was extraordinary. Duan Lingtian's acute spiritual force stretched out and detected the middle-aged man's cultivation at the first possible moment. Third level of the void prying stage. Elder Fengping. Right when Duan Lingtian was curious about the identity of the person that had arrived, Zhao Lei had already bowed respectfully to the person that had arrived. Elder Fengping? Duan Lingtian's gaze shone. Fengping was precisely one of the seven-star sword sect elders that the sect leader of the seven-star sword sect, Linghu Jinhong, asked him to look for that was stationed at the ancient city of Everlast's ancient river trading company branch. You are? After Fengping replied to Zhao Lei, his gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian, and he frowned as his gaze abruptly became fierce. Who are you? Why are you wearing the uniform of an inner court disciple of my seven-star sword sect? With Duan Lingtian's current age, no one would believe that Duan Lingtian was a seven-star sword sect inner court disciple. After all, even the most outstanding figures in the younger generation of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the 5 great young masters, might not have the strength to become a seven-star sword sect inner court disciple at such an age. Elder Fengping. Duan Lingtian looked at Fengping, and he hadn't finished speaking when he was interrupted by Zhao Lei. Elder Fengping. This person is impersonating an inner court disciple of our seven-star sword sect, and his crime is punishable by death. Elder Fengping. Please kill this person to put an end to future troubles. Zhao Lei looked at Duan Lingtian, and his eyes emitted ghastly coldness as he spoke in a clear voice. Fengping's face sank when he heard Zhao Lei, and he looked at Duan Lingtian. Who exactly are you? Why are you impersonating an inner court disciple of my seven-star sword sect? Elder Fengping. Zhao Lei was anxious when he saw Fengping wanted to give Duan Lingtian a chance to explain. This person is full of cunning. There's no need to speak any further with him. Just kill him directly. Haha, Duan Lingtian naturally discerned Zhao Lei's objective, and he couldn't help but laugh loudly. Chapter 412. What are you laughing at? Fengping frowned and had a face full of displeasure. Elder Fengping, I'm only laughing. Some people just like to distort the truth, and wish for nothing more than for you to kill me before I can explain myself. Duan Lingtian's face revealed a brilliant smile as he spoke with a hidden meaning behind his words. Kid, you're courting death. How could Zhao Lei not know that Duan Lingtian was talking about him when he heard what Duan Lingtian said? And he instantly flew into a rage. But although he was furious, he didn't dare make a move. He'd experienced Duan Lingtian's strength. Although he didn't know exactly what level Duan Lingtian was at, since Duan Lingtian was able to defeat him so easily, Duan Lingtian was surely in existence at the 4th level of the nascent soul stage or above. Who the hell are you? Fengping realized that the matter had slightly exceeded his expectations. He was extremely clear of Zhao Lei's character. Logically speaking, just what this young man said earlier was sufficient to make Zhao Lei unable to restrain himself and directly attack. But now, although Zhao Lei was furious, he didn't make any move. Not only that, he also inadvertently discovered that when Zhao Lei looked at this young man, his eyes actually revealed a bit of fear. Elder Fengping, this attire of mine is sufficient to prove my identity. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled, and his smile lightly brushed, causing others to feel as if they were bathed in a spring breeze. Besides this, what proof do you have? Fengping asked in a low voice. Originally, I had a letter that the sect leader asked me to pass to Elder Fengping. But unfortunately, it was torn to shreds by him outside the city. As Duan Lingtian spoke up to hear, he glanced deeply at Zhao Lei who stood at the side. Feng Ping's face slightly went grim when he heard this, and he looked at Zhao Lei. Zhao Lei, is what he said true? Elder Feng Ping. This person harbors ill intentions. That letter is surely forged. Zhao Lei looked at Duan Lingtian, and his eyes emitted a vicious sheen, as if transforming into a bloodthirsty fierce beast that would pounce over and tear Duan Lingtian into pieces at any moment. Forged. Feng Ping's face sank, and he shouted in a low voice, "How do you know it's forged? What if it was true? I'm sure I can recognize the sect leader's handwriting. Now that you've destroyed the letter, if he really was sent by the sect leader, how do you expect me to explain this to the sect leader? Elder Feng Ping, this person is definitely a disguise. Don't listen to his nonsense, just kill him." Zhao Lei made a final effort, wanting to borrow Feng Ping's hand to get rid of Duan Lingtian. However, how could Francis Ping be so easily fooled? "Do you have anything else to prove your identity?" Francis Ping gazed at Duan Lingtian, as his expression softened slightly as he inquired. "Other things." Duan Lingtian fell into deep thought. In the end, Duan Lingtian said, "Elder Feng Ping, I wonder if my understanding of the terrain of the various great sword peaks of the Seven-Star Sword Sect and my familiarity with some people of the Seven-Star Sword Sect can prove my identity?" Francis Ping hadn't spoken when Zhao Lei had already spoken out in disdain. "Kid, the things you speak of are utterly insufficient to prove that you're a Seven-Star Sword Sect disciple. You can casually find a Seven-Star Sword Sect disciple and ask them clearly about these things." Duan Lingtian's face sank. This Zhao Lei is really like a ghost that won't go away. "Do you have any other proof?" Francis Ping looked at Duan Lingtian and asked. Obviously, he agreed with what Zhao Lei said earlier. "Yes." Duan Lingtian nodded in reply, and his tone was resolute and decisive. This scene caused Zhao Lei's face to sink, and his heart was in a mess. Could it be that this fellow can really prove that he's an inner court disciple of our Seven-Star Sword Sect? Because of the conflict between him and Duan Lingtian, Zhao Lei didn't hope that Duan Lingtian could prove his identity as a Seven-Star Sword Sect inner court disciple. Otherwise, if he wanted to take revenge in the future, it would be harder than ascending to the heavens. What proof? Francis Ping's gaze shone. As for Zhao Lei, he now had an expression of fear as he looked at Duan Lingtian. "The proof is," as Duan Lingtian spoke up to hear. He paused for a moment. After successfully whetting the appetite of the people present, his gaze descended onto Zhao Lei and he said bluntly, "I'm stronger than him. I'm stronger than him." Duan Lingtian said this short sentence extremely straightforwardly, without the slightest hesitation. Instantly, Zhao Lei's face became unsightly, and rage arose within his heart. As far as he was concerned, this Duan Lingtian obviously had the intention of belittling him by mentioning a sore spot. As for Francis Ping, he was stunned for a moment, then glanced at Zhao Lei and noticed that although Zhao Lei's expression was unsightly, he had no way to refute it. He realized that what this young man said was very likely to be true. "You're stronger than Zhao Lei? Then your cultivation." Francis Ping looked at Duan Lingtian, and his face contained slight astonishment mixed within. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's origin energy pulsated and raged as it suffused the surface of his body, seeming to have transformed into a milky white light barrier that enveloped his entire body within. Duan Lingtian knew clearly. At this moment, even if he spoke extravagantly, it wasn't as persuasive as the facts. Whoosh! Instantly, 600 lifelike ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form in the sky above Duan Lingtian, accumulating strength and waiting to be deployed. Fourth level of the nascent soul stage. The pupils of the young man from the ancient river trading company's branch that brought Duan Lingtian in constricted, and he had an astonished expression. It was difficult for him to imagine. This young man that looked to be around the age of 22 was actually a fourth-level nascent soul stage martial artist. Such natural talent caused one to be shocked. He wasn't the only one that was shocked. He's really at the fourth level of the nascent soul stage. Even though Zhao Lei had guessed earlier, but when he really witnessed it with his own two eyes, his expression became even more unsightly. "How old are you this year?" Feng Ping was shocked by Duan Lingtian's cultivation to the point he was dumbstruck, and after a long time, he stared at Duan Lingtian with a burning gaze as he asked. 22. Duan Lingtian spoke indifferently with a carefree expression. It was as if everything that happened earlier was nothing to him. 22 years old. 4th level nascent soul stage. Hiss. Francis Ping sucked in a breath of cold air. Such natural talent was sufficient to surpass any one of the 5 most outstanding young masters in the younger generation of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. You're really an inner court disciple of our 7-star sword sect? Feng Ping stared at Duan Lingtian with a burning gaze, and he had an expression of anticipation. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. When did you join the sect? Feng Ping asked. I joined the sect for less than 3 years. Duan Lingtian spoke slowly. Less than 3 years. Feng Ping nodded. Then it ought to be correct. We haven't contacted the sect during these 3 years. Elder Feng Ping. Zhao Lei frowned. This person's origins are unknown, and there's no way to prove that he's a 7-star sword sect inner court disciple. You can't just believe his nonsense like this. Zhao Lei. Feng Ping glanced indifferently at Zhao Lei and slowly said, I don't care what deep enmity you have with him. Do you think I'm brainless and don't know how to distinguish truth from lies by saying this? Would a figure whose natural talent in the martial Dao surpassed the 5 great young masters be bored to the point of pretending to be an inner court disciple of our 7-star sword sect? Zhao Lei's face sank. What's so exciting? Right at this moment, a voice that was like muffled thunder sounded out. A robust middle-aged man with large shoulders and a round waist walked out from within and slowly walked over. Zhao Lei seemed as if he'd seen his savior when he saw this middle-aged man, and his gaze abruptly lit up as he said in pleasant surprise, Father. Duan Lingtian's gaze now descended onto the person that had arrived as well. The way Zhao Lei addressed the person that had arrived caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to refrain from frowning. At the instant the person appeared, his spiritual force detected the cultivation of the person at the first possible moment, and just like Feng Ping, he was a 3rd-level void-prying stage martial artist as well. Zhao Lei. Zhao. Could it be that he's Elder Zhao Yu? The depths of Duan Lingtian's eyes imperceptibly revealed a trace of fear. Zhao Yu was similar to Feng Ping. They were both external affairs elders of the 7-star sword sect, and they were usually in the ancient city of Everlast guarding the ancient river trading company's branch. This is Elder Zhao Yu. Meanwhile, Feng Ping introduced the person to Duan Lingtian, and at the same time, he seemed to have thought of something and was stunned. I still don't know your name? Duan Lingtian. At the same time that Duan Lingtian introduced himself, he looked at Zhao Yu and nodded indifferently. Elder Zhao Yu. Originally, Zhao Yu had a calm expression that was like an ancient well without ripples. After a short moment, his expression slightly sank imperceptibly, and it was noticed by Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian knew clearly in his heart that it was probably Zhao Lei who sent a voice transmission to Zhao Yu and spoke of the conflict between him and Duan Lingtian earlier. As Zhao Lei's father, Zhao Yu naturally wouldn't be willing to allow his son to suffer such humiliation. Duan Lingtian? Zhao Yu looked at Duan Lingtian with a calm expression, but the depths of his gaze seemed to contain slight rage mixed within. My son has already told me about you via voice transmission. You have no way to prove that you're an inner court disciple of my 7-star sword sect? Duan Lingtian frowned. Elder Zhao Yu, Elder Feng Ping has already confirmed my identity. I wonder what you mean by this? Feng Ping. Zhao Yu looked at Feng Ping. You think it's impossible for him to pretend to be an inner court disciple of my 7-star sword sect just based on his natural talent in the martial Dao that is extraordinary? Aren't you slightly rash in doing this? Perhaps he really has some ulterior motives. Feng Ping's expression froze when he heard Zhao Yu. According to his understanding of Zhao Yu was absolutely not someone that would cause trouble without reason. When he thought of the conflict between Duan Lingtian and Zhao Lei, he vaguely guessed something. Elder Zhao Yu, you're right? Feng Ping nodded. How about this, let him stay for now. The 2 of us will find someone to ride on a nascent soul stage flying beast, and return to the 7-star sword sect to ask the sect leader about the sequence of events. How about it? Zhao Yu nodded indifferently towards this and had no objections. Duan Lingtian, follow me. Feng Ping called out to Duan Lingtian, and brought him into an inner court within the large courtyard of the ancient river trading company's branch. There were many empty small courtyards within the inner court. You'll stay in this courtyard in the future. Feng Ping brought Duan Lingtian into an empty small courtyard. Within the small courtyard, The flowers and plants were verdant, and the environment was extremely good. The small courtyard I stay in is beside it. In the future, if you need anything, just let me know. Chapter 4:13. Duan Lingtian nodded. He knew that the reason Feng Ping asked him to stay in this small courtyard was undoubtedly because Feng Ping had the intention of monitoring him. After all, his identity hadn't been confirmed yet, right? Suddenly, seeming to have thought of something, Feng Ping looked at Duan Lingtian and asked curiously, "What exactly is the conflict between you and Zhao Lei?" Feng Ping's words caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to refrain from recalling the scene of Zhao Lei entering the city in his birthday suit, and the corners of his mouth curled into a slight smile. Then, he explained the whole sequence of events one by one. "This Zhao Lei has gone too far." Feng Ping frowned, then sighed. "Duan Lingtian, you've gone slightly too far. Although, with Zhao Lei's actions, even if you punish him like this, it wouldn't be going too far. But he's Elder Zhao Yu's only son after all, and your actions have undoubtedly caused Elder Zhao Yu to lose face. No wonder I felt something was off with Elder Zhao Yu earlier. Looks like he already knows of this matter." As he finished speaking, Feng Ping shook his head. Duan Lingtian shrugged with an indifferent expression. "I won't do anything to others for no reason. But if they bully me, then I'm not a soft persimmon that can be kneaded as they please." As he finished speaking, a strand of cold light flashed within Duan Lingtian's eyes, and it was icy cold and bone-piercing. Feng Ping sighed. He wasn't surprised that Duan Lingtian made such a stand. If Duan Lingtian was a yes-man, perhaps he would feel that Duan Lingtian had let down his monstrous natural talent in the martial Dao martial artists, especially martial artists with monstrous natural talent like Duan Lingtian, ought to be unyielding. "Why did the sect leader ask you to come to the ancient city of Everlast?" Feng Ping asked. "The sect leader asked me to come out and gain experience." Duan Lingtian lightly smiled as he spoke. Feng Ping nodded. "Since it's like this, then stay here first. I'll send someone to the 7-star sword sect to confirm your identity. Going back and forth will take almost 2 months of time. In these 2 months, you will follow me and gain experience. As long as it is something that you can solve, I will not interfere." Duan Lingtian nodded. Very quickly, Francis Ping bid farewell to Duan Lingtian and left. Duan Lingtian returned to his room alone. Duan Lingtian had just closed the door when he felt his sleeve lighten, and a golden ray of light flew out. It was precisely the little gold mouse. Creak, creak, the little gold mouse looked at Duan Lingtian and cried out twice. At the same time, the little gold mouse's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears with an immature voice that was like that of a little girl. "Big brother Lingtian, that Zhao Lei is truly detestable. And that Zhao Yu, he's obviously not a good person. I'll help you get rid of him, okay?" As the little gold mouse spoke, its jade green eyes stared at Duan Lingtian. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched. It could be seen from this that the education he gave the little gold mouse earlier had completely ended in failure. "Little gold, that Zhao Yu isn't simple. He's a 3rd-level void prying stage martial artist. The current you isn't a match for him." Duan Lingtian spoke with a serious expression. The little gold mouse relied on half-step advanced lightning force to kill 2nd-level void prying stage demon beasts and martial artists that hadn't comprehended force. Even if an existence at the 3rd level of the void prying stage hadn't comprehended force, it wasn't something the little gold mouse could kill now. Moreover, since that Zhao Yu was a 7-star sword sect elder with a cultivation at the 3rd level of the void prying stage, it was impossible for him to not have comprehended force. 3rd level of the void prying stage? The little gold mouse was slightly disappointed, and she sat down on the bed and drooped her little head. "Alright, if you want to kill him, you'll be able to sooner or later. Little fellow, it's at most been 7 years since you were born. Whereas Zhao Yu cultivated for a few tens of years before possessing that cultivation." Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be amused when he saw the little gold mouse's disappointed appearance, and he consoled her. "You possess the bloodline of a jade-eyed heavenly mouse, so surpassing him is only a matter of time." The little gold mouse nodded when she heard Duan Lingtian's encouragement, and her jade-green eyes were brimming with spirit. Just like this, Duan Lingtian temporarily stayed in the courtyard of the ancient river trading company's branch. Whereas now, outside the ancient city of Everlast, Two black figures flashed out one after the other after a period of time, and they were precisely two nascent soul stage flying fierce beasts. The direction they headed towards was precisely the location of the 7-star sword sect. There was a person sitting on each of them. The clothes of these two people had the symbol of the Ancient River Trading Company, and they were obviously members of the Ancient River Trading Company. In the next few days, Duan Lingtian had a certain level of understanding of the Ancient River Trading Company and the Ancient River Trading Company's branch in the ancient city of Everlast. The resources and reserves of the Ancient River Trading Company could only be ranked in the middle amongst the numerous trading companies in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. To a certain extent, the Ancient River Trading Company was attached to the 7-star sword sect, and it handed over a large amount of gold and silver to the 7-star sword sect every year, whereas the 7-star sword sect had to provide the necessary protection for the Ancient River Trading Company. The 7-star sword sect members led by Feng Ping and Zhao Yu were instead responsible for guarding the Ancient River Trading Company's branch, of course. Besides guarding the branch, they would occasionally participate in escorting the Ancient River Trading Company's merchant groups. When the merchant groups traveled outside, they would be unable to avoid encountering the attacks of some bandits, and having the 7-star sword sect's elders and disciples personally escorting them was undoubtedly slightly more secure. At dawn, the light of dawn enveloped the ground, and everything came to life. Duan Lingtian, who sat cross-legged on the bed, opened his eyes, and a bright light flashed within. There's still some distance before I reach the 5th level of the nascent soul stage. Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief, then walked out of his room and stretched his limbs in the courtyard. Duan Lingtian. Suddenly, a voice sounded out from outside the courtyard. Elder Feng Ping. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised when he saw Feng Ping enter. Is there something you need? After all, it had already been 7 or 8 days since he came to the Ancient River Trading Company's branch that day. Today was the first time Elder Feng Ping had come looking for him. Duan Lingtian's first thought was, could it be that I have to escort the merchant group? The facts proved that he guessed correctly. Duan Lingtian, the Ancient River Trading Company's branch, has a batch of goods to send out. 3 days from now, I'll bring along the other 3 7-star sword sect disciples to escort the merchant group. At that time you go as well. Feng Ping went straight to the point as he spoke to Duan Lingtian. All right. Duan Lingtian agreed, as he could finally go out and get some fresh air. He knew that before his identity as a 7-star sword sect inner court disciple was confirmed, Feng Ping would not allow him to vanish from his field of vision. He didn't mind this. He was originally a 7-star sword sect inner court disciple, and there was utterly no need for him to feel guilty. After Feng Ping left, Duan Lingtian didn't continue cultivating, and he lay down on the clean lawn of the small courtyard, then crossed his legs and looked up at the blue sky and white clouds in the horizon as he basked in the sun with satisfaction. The gentle sunlight sprinkled down, causing Duan Lingtian's body to feel comfortably warm. Squeak squeak. Meanwhile, the little gold mouse that was hidden within Duan Lingtian's sleeve crawled out as well. Then it lay by Duan Lingtian's side and copied Duan Lingtian as it crossed its legs. A pair of jade green eyes spun about, and they were quick-witted and crafty. Big brother Lingtian, I miss big sister Kerr. The little gold mouse's voice transmission sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. Kerr didn't dote on you for nothing, little fellow. Duan Lingtian held the little gold mouse in his hand and lightly combed its fur. But since we've come out, then properly stay outside for a period of time. Once they confirm my identity, I'll bring you around the surroundings. Okay. The little gold mouse leaped for joy and was extremely excited when it heard Duan Lingtian. Flowing lights revolved within its jade green eyes, and they were like 2 beautiful gems that flickered. At this moment, Kerr was completely tossed to the back of its mind. The precondition is that you have to listen to me. If there's an outsider present and I don't ask you to come out, then you absolutely can't come out, understand? Duan Lingtian changed the topic and started to discuss the conditions with the little gold mouse. The little gold mouse was in high spirits, and she naturally agreed to Duan Lingtian's request in every way. 3 days later, Duan Lingtian rode a tall horse and followed by Elder Feng Ping's side as they set out with the Ancient River Trading Company's merchant group and left the ancient city of Everlast. Besides him and Feng Ping, there were another 3 7-star sword sect inner court disciples, including Zhao Lei, in the 7-star sword sect. These two inner court disciples were similar in age to Zhao Lei, and they were currently galloping their horses together with Zhao Lei. At this moment, the gazes they shot at Duan Lingtian contained slight doubt mixed within. Zhao Lei. He's that inner court disciple that came from the sect? One of the inner court disciples asked Zhao Lei in a light voice. Humph. Zhao Lei glanced coldly and indifferently at Duan Lingtian, then said indifferently, I can't be sure now if he's a member of our 7-star sword sect. Everything can only be revealed after we return from this trip. Zhao Lei, you stripped off your clothes and entered the city in your birthday suit under the threat of this young man? The other inner court disciple looked at Zhao Lei, and a spurious smile hung on his face. This caused Zhao Lei to fly into a rage out of humiliation. The incident from that day was already known by everyone now, and it seemed to have become a stain in his life. When he thought up to here, Zhao Lei's face sank, and his icy cold and vicious gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian, as far as he was concerned. All of this was because of Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, I Zhao Lei, am absolutely irreconcilable with you. Zhao Lei hated Duan Lingtian to the limit in his heart. Duan Lingtian naturally noticed Zhao Lei's gaze, yet he didn't care in the slightest, and completely disregarded it as he conversed with Feng Ping. Elder Feng Ping, where's Elder Zhao Yu? Elder Zhao Yu is in charge of guarding the Ancient River Trading Company's branch. This time, it's the 5 of us that are in charge of escorting the merchant group all the way. Feng Ping said to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded, then asked, Elder Zhao Lin, how long will it take for us to escort the merchant group to and fro this time? Around 2 months. Feng Ping pondered for a moment before slowly speaking. Subsequently, seeming to have thought of something, Feng Ping continued to add, 2 months from now, the people that Elder Zhao Yu and I sent to the 7-star sword sect ought to have returned. At that time, whether you're an inner court disciple of our 7-star sword sect will be revealed. Duan Lingtian nodded and didn't mind in the slightest. As far as he was concerned. Chapter 4:14. The merchant group that was like a long dragon left the ancient city of Everlast and headed east. Besides Duan Lingtian's group of 5, there was also a guard team in the entire merchant group. The leader of the guard team was a 6th-level nascent soul stage martial artist. Duan Lingtian had a calm expression as he spurred his horse through the desert, and his mind was completely immersed in cultivation. 9 dragons wore sovereign technique. Wind WRM form. This scene caused Feng Ping, who walked by Duan Lingtian's side, to be unable to help but be slightly moved. He glanced at the 3 7-star sword sect disciples that were chatting and laughing nearby, and the clear contrast caused him to sigh in his heart. Not only is this Duan Lingtian's natural talent high, he's also so hardworking. No wonder he possesses such a cultivation at such a young age. The merchant group moved and stopped, and half a month quickly passed by. During this half a month, the merchant group didn't encounter any bandits. On this day, thump, 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 the rapid sound of horse hooves suddenly sounded out from afar, and for a time the entire ground seemed as if it was quaking. Stop! Along with the explosive shout of the leader of the Ancient River Trading Company's guards, the Ancient River Trading Company stopped. Elder Feng Ping. After the merchant group stopped, the leader of the guards looked at Feng Ping with a respectful expression. Although he was the leader of the guards of this merchant group, his cultivation was only at the 6th level of the nascent soul stage, and it was nothing compared to this 7-star sword sect elder. The safety of the merchant group mainly relied on this 7-star sword sect elder. Feng Ping nodded. Then he brought along Duan Lingtian and the other 3 7-star sword sect disciples to slowly gallop out to greet the merchant group in the distance. The distance was precisely the place where the sound came from. Meanwhile, under the lead of the leader of the guards, the 100-plus guards of the merchant group followed behind Duan Lingtian's group to boost their momentum. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's eyes squinted. He was able to see that there were over 100 horses galloping over in the distance with a vast impetus. In the blink of an eye, they'd already arrived nearby them. Nay, nay. One by one, the horses stopped not far in front of Duan Lingtian and the others. There was a person sitting on each of these tall horses. There were more than 100 people in total. They were dressed in all kinds of clothes and looked extremely valiant. Horse bandits. Duan Lingtian immediately guessed the identity of these people. Leave your goods behind and scram. The leader of the bandits was a burly middle-aged man with a scar on his face. He looked extremely ferocious and was currently yelling at Duan Lingtian and the others. This person was obviously the bandit leader. Where did you bandits come from? Don't you know that this is our ancient river trading company's caravan? At this moment, the leader of the guards rode his horse forward and stood beside Francis, as he looked at the bandit leader and spoke in a low voice. Ancient River Trading Company? I've never heard of it. When the leader of the bandits heard the guard leader's words, he glared at him with his big eyes and shouted, "Didn't you hear what I said? I'll give all of you 15 minutes to prepare. After 15 minutes, if I still see any one of you, I'll—" The leader of the bandits hadn't finished speaking when he was interrupted by a gray-clothed bandit that rode his horse forward from behind. Leader, this is the Ancient River Trading Company's caravan. Let's withdraw. This bandit had a fearful expression, and his body started shivering. Withdraw? The bandit leader frowned and had a puzzled expression towards his subordinate's words. This subordinate was one of the strongest amongst his subordinates, and logically speaking, this subordinate shouldn't be such a coward. Leader, this Ancient River Trading Company is under the protection of the Seven-Star Sword Sect. Look at these people, they're all members of the Seven-Star Sword Sect. Especially this middle-aged man. He's wearing the attire of a Seven-Star Sword Sect elder. If I'm not wrong, he ought to be one of the 2 external affairs elders of the Seven-Star Sword Sect that's guarding the Ancient River Trading Company's branch in the ancient city of Everlast. As he finished speaking, the gray-clothed bandit had a terrified expression. Supposedly, the 2 external affairs elders of the Seven-Star Sword Sect that's guarding the Ancient River Trading Company's branch in the ancient city of Everlast are both existences at the 3rd level of the void prying stage. Actually, when the gray-clothed bandit mentioned the Seven-Star Sword Sect, the bandit leader's expression had already gone pale. Now, after he finished listening to the gray-clothed bandit, his pupils couldn't help but constrict. 3rd level of the void prying stage? We've caused great trouble. The bandit leader's heart trembled and his face went pale. Then his gaze descended onto Feng Ping, who wore the attire of a Seven-Star Sword Sect elder, and he cupped his hands. Sir, Old Third Wang, didn't know that you're a senior of the Seven-Star Sword Sect. I've been rude. Presently, the bandit leader had a terrified expression. Humph. You bandits know you've bitten off more than you can chew, right? You dare rob a merchant caravan that's under the protection of our Seven-Star Sword Sect? You've really eaten the guts of a leopard. Feng Ping hadn't said anything when Zhao Lei had already snorted coldly and reprimanded the bandit leader. The bandit leader's face went grim. He was a 9th-level nascent soul stage martial artist at any rate. He was afraid of a Seven-Star Sword Sect elder, but it didn't mean that he was afraid of an ordinary Seven-Star Sword Sect disciple. But when he thought of the Seven-Star Sword Sect elder present, he lowered his arrogant head and hurriedly agreed, not daring to hesitate. He knew clearly in his heart, with the strength of a void-prying stage expert, it was sufficient to sweep through their entire bandit group. When he saw the bandit leader admitting defeat, Zhao Lei, who borrowed Feng Ping's power, had a complacent expression. Finally, Feng Ping spoke, and he glanced indifferently at the bandit leader. Since all of you know you're unable to take us down, then according to the rules of the Boundless Desert, you cripple your own cultivation. The rules of the Boundless Desert. If a bandit group was blind and offended in existence that was difficult to match, then at the moment of annihilation, the bandit leader could make a choice to save the entire bandit group. So long as the bandit leader crippled his own cultivation, the bandit group would be able to escape calamity. What Feng Ping said caused the bandit leader's face to go grim. Respected Seven-Star Sword Sect elder. Meanwhile, the gray-clothed bandit looked at Feng Ping with a terrified expression. Our leader and our group of brothers have just entered the trade and were momentarily muddle-headed, thus stopping the Ancient River Trading Company's merchant group. Elder, please give us a way out and spare us. Just entered the trade? Duan Lingtian had a strange gaze. In this way, most of these bandits were hotheads, but at this moment Duan Lingtian still felt admiration from the bottom of his heart towards Feng Ping's deterrent force. Feng Ping's strength deterred this group of bandits, causing them to utterly not dare make a move. This was a world where the strong were respected. At this moment it was vividly displayed. Since you don't dare, then I'll help you. Feng Ping spoke indifferently. Right when Feng Ping finished speaking, the bandit leader's face went grim. Whoosh! A wave of ear-piercing howls of the wind gave rise to endless sounds of air exploding, and it entered into the ears of everyone present. The people present only saw the energy of heaven and earth royal in the sky, and it condensed into 4,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes that dashed out bang. H. An enormous sound accompanied by a shrill cry sounded out at almost the exact same time. In the next moment, everyone saw that in the blink of an eye, Feng Ping had returned to his horse, whereas the bandit leader had instead been blasted flying with his horse. In the sky above the bandit leader, the ancient mammoth silhouettes that had just condensed completely dispersed. No, no, no! After the bandit leader repeatedly spat out a few mouthfuls of blood, he seemed to have realized something, and his face went ghastly pale. His eyes that were filled with hatred stared at Feng Ping. You crippled my cultivation, you actually crippled my cultivation. Fight it out, I'll fight it out with you. The bandit leader struggled to stand up, then charged shakily towards Feng Ping. Leader! The expressions of the group of bandits went grim. You're courting death. An explosive shout suddenly sounded out, and a figure flashed out. Swish! A sword howl sounded out. In the next moment, a bloody hole appeared on the throat of the bandit leader, and his body trembled before crashing onto the ground. Trash! The person that attacked was precisely Zhao Lei. After Zhao Lei returned to his horse, he coldly swept the corpse of the bandit leader with his gaze as he spoke in disdain. Duan Lingtian frowned when he saw this scene. As far as he was concerned, Zhao Lei's actions were slightly excessive. Without his cultivation, the bandit leader was no longer a threat. Zhao Lei! Feng Ping frowned and had a displeased expression, as he felt that Zhao Lei had gone against the rules. Elder Feng Ping, he's a trash without his cultivation anyway, and there's no point in keeping him. Zhao Lei beamed with joy and had an indifferent expression. You actually killed our leader. The gray-clothed bandit recovered from his shock, and extreme rage appeared on his face as he looked at Zhao Lei. Are all 7-star sword sect disciples so shameless and so unruly? Shit! Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian was able to notice that strands of killing intent that shot into the sky seemed to have arisen from the remaining group of bandits. Brothers, they didn't follow the rules. Even if we risk our lives, we'll take revenge for our leader. Along with the gray-clothed bandits' explosive shout, take revenge for our leader. Kill. Kill them. The group of bandits went completely berserk, and all of them seemed as if they'd gone mad as they spurred their horses to gallop out with an imposing manner that shot into the sky like a rainbow. Origin energy skyrocketed on the sabers in the hands of the bandits as they flashed towards Duan Lingtian and the others. OM! 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 Saber lights that covered the sky swept over. Over 100 bandits that weren't afraid of death charged over, and even if Feng Ping attacked with his full strength, he wouldn't be able to kill them all in a short period of time. Before long, Duan Lingtian and the others were drowned by the bandits as well. A bloody slaughter had completely unfolded. Duan Lingtian sat on his tall horse with one hand pressing down on the horse's head to placate the restless horse, and his other hand held onto his narrow sword. Duan Lingtian never took the initiative to launch an attack. But every single bandit that attacked Duan Lingtian died under his sword without exception. In next to no time, the group of bandits realized that Duan Lingtian wasn't to be trifled with, and they intentionally or unintentionally avoided Duan Lingtian. For a time, the area Duan Lingtian was at had formed into a strange empty space. In the group of bandits, the bandit leader's strength was the strongest. The remaining bandits were only slightly stronger, including the gray-clothed bandit. These 10-plus bandits were the targets that Feng Ping took special care of. However, there were still some that escaped the net in the end. You actually dared kill the leader, I'll kill you. Looking down on me like this? When Duan Lingtian saw the gray-clothed bandit flashing past him, his gaze still descended onto Zhao Lei, and slight ridicule instantly appeared on his face. OM. Presently, the saber strike that the gray-clothed bandit flashed over was extremely casual. Perhaps this saber strike was able to kill an ordinary 4th-level nascent soul stage martial artist. But Duan Lingtian wasn't an ordinary 4th-level nascent soul stage martial artist. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian felt a strong wind that was filled with killing intent fiercely sweep towards his throat, causing him to feel a wave of coldness in his heart. In an instant, Duan Lingtian's eyes abruptly went cold. "You're courting death." Instantly, Duan Lingtian moved. Origin energy raged on his legs, and the force of the wind arose in the blink of an eye. Duan Lingtian borrowed strength from the horse and his entire body seemed to soar into the sky, barely dodging the gray-clothed bandit's swift saber strike with incomparable agility. His entire movement was like moving clouds and flowing water. This scene felt as if it was discussed beforehand, and the gray-clothed bandit was instead cooperating with Duan Lingtian to put on a show. How can this be possible? In the distance, Zhao Lei, who'd rushed to Elder Fengping's side with great difficulty and obtained a sense of security, saw this scene with his own 2 eyes, and his pupils constricted and he had an expression of disbelief. This Duan Lingtian actually dodged the attack of a 6th-level nascent soul stage martial artist? In next to no time, Zhao Lei clearly saw the ancient mammoth silhouettes that appeared in the sky above Duan Lingtian, and his face was incomparably ghastly pale. 8. The strength of 800 ancient mammoths? This Duan Lingtian is a 6th-level nascent soul stage martial artist? Zhao Lei was stupefied, completely stupefied. A 22-year-old 6th-level nascent soul stage martial artist? This I wouldn't be dreaming, right? When he thought up to here, Zhao Lei couldn't help but extend his hand to pinch his thigh. At the beginning, he who was slightly numb didn't feel any pain, and he instantly felt a wave of pleasant surprise. Looks like I'm really dreaming. Like I said, how could that Duan Lingtian possibly have such a formidable cultivation? In the next moment, Zhao Lei's thoughts stopped abruptly, only because the intense pain on his thigh had already entered his nerves. I'm not dreaming? Zhao Lei's face went grim, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness. Damn it! This Duan Lingtian isn't old, but actually possesses such a shocking cultivation. We're all humans, but why is the difference so great? The heavens are unfair. At this moment, most of the remaining bandits had already died, and many people had witnessed this scene with their own 2 eyes. Amongst them included the 7-star sword sect's elder, Fengping. That's wind force. Unlike Zhao Lei, Fengping discerned with a glance that the origin energy on Duan Lingtian's leg was suffused with a strange aura. As a void-prying stage martial artist that had similarly comprehended wind force, he was extremely familiar with wind force. That isn't a wind force seed. It's a true wind force, elementary wind force. After seeing all this, Fengping's pupils constricted, and his face was filled with astonishment and disbelief. A nascent soul stage martial artist comprehending elementary wind force? I'm not seeing things right. 6th-level nascent soul stage. And now waves of exclamations of shock sounded out. It was the remaining people that were shocked by the 800 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed from the energy of heaven and earth that Duan Lingtian drew upon. Besides Fengping, no one present was able to discern that amongst the strength of 800 ancient mammoths that Duan Lingtian exerted, 200 of them belonged to elementary wind force. What? The expression of the gray-clothed bandit went grim after his saber strike missed. When he slightly turned around and saw the 800 ancient mammoth silhouettes above Duan Lingtian, his expression went grim. He realized that he'd made an enormous mistake. He'd underestimated this young man that was a little over 20. He originally thought that Duan Lingtian was only a nobody, but who would have imagined that this young man was actually a 6th-level nascent soul stage martial artist like him? At this moment he even had the heart to die. Whoosh! The origin energy on the gray-clothed bandit's body roiled as he wanted to turn his body in midair, but he still suffered from inertia resistance. Immediately, a look of despair appeared on his face. He knew that he was finished. He was indeed finished. Whoosh! Along with Duan Lingtian's gaze going slightly cold, the grade 6 spirit sword in his hand whistled out and descended onto the back of the gray-clothed bandit, piercing through his heart and coming out from his body. The gray-clothed bandit's body shook and stopped in midair, then crashed down, dead. Not to mention the gray-clothed bandit had sold such a great flaw to Duan Lingtian. Even without this flaw, it would still be extremely easy for Duan Lingtian to kill him. After all, even if it was a 6th-level nascent soul stage martial artist that possessed a grade 6 spirit saber and had comprehended a saber force seed, the saber young master of the 5 great young masters, 2 months ago he'd similarly lost at the hands of Duan Lingtian. An ordinary 6th-level nascent soul stage martial artist like the gray-clothed bandit didn't pose the slightest threat to Duan Lingtian. The expressions of those bandits that were originally charging towards Duan Lingtian went grim when they saw this scene. Instantly, they realized that this young man was simply a devil flea. A few mounted gangsters looked at each other and ran away. Duan Lingtian didn't chase after them. In next to no time, these bandits were killed by the joint forces of the guard leader of the merchant group and the group of guards. Since then, over 100 bandits had been completely annihilated. On the side of the ancient river trading company, only over 10 guards were injured, and no one was killed, so it could be considered to be a complete victory. The group of bandits had been completely annihilated. Yet the scene was deathly silent. The gazes of everyone, including the gazes of the carriage drivers of the merchant group, had all descended onto Duan Lingtian in unison: gulp, 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 gulp. For a time, waves of swallowing saliva with difficulty could be vaguely heard. He's actually so strong. The other 2 7-star sword sect inner court disciples looked at each other and had astonished expressions. It's difficult to imagine that a 22-year-old young man actually possesses such strength. Now I hope that he's really a disciple of our 7-star sword sect. Yeah, with him in the 7-star sword sect, why should we worry about being unable to continue being glorious? Although the 2 7-star sword sect inner court disciples were older than Duan Lingtian by over 10 years, but at this moment, the gazes they looked at Duan Lingtian with were filled with reverence. Duan Lingtian's natural talent and strength caused them to be wholeheartedly convinced. Duan Lingtian, looks like I've still underestimated you. Finally, Feng Ping spoke out and broke the silence at the scene. The gaze Feng Ping looked at Duan Lingtian with was extremely complicated up until now. He still couldn't figure out how a 4th-level nascent soul stage martial artist could possibly comprehend elementary wind force. As a 3rd-level void-prying stage martial artist that had comprehended half-step advanced wind force, he could be 100% sure. Earlier, when Duan Lingtian dodged the gray-clothed bandit's saber, he'd absolutely utilized wind force. This Duan Ling, how could he possibly possess such strength? Zhao Lei's face was livid. He originally thought that Duan Lingtian was only a 4th-level nascent soul stage martial artist, but never had he imagined that Duan Lingtian concealed his strength so deeply. In next to no time, the merchant group rested for a while before continuing on their journey. Duan Lingtian noticed. Presently, besides Elder Feng Ping. Chapter 416. If it wasn't for some people acting on their own, that group of bandits wouldn't have gone mad. They're all 7-star sword sect disciples, but why is the difference so great? Some people have no ability yet like to show off. If it wasn't for that bandit leader having his cultivation crippled by Elder Feng Ping, would some people dare make a move against him? Fortunately, none of our brothers were killed otherwise. The group of merchant guards discussed animatedly, and their intentions were clear. Zhao Lei's face sank, as he naturally guessed that these guards were talking about him. Duan Lingtian, are you really only at the 4th level of the nascent soul stage? On the other side, a voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian was able to discern that this was Elder Feng Ping's voice, and he instantly replied via voice transmission. Yes. Feng Ping's pupils constricted when he obtained Duan Lingtian's acknowledgement. How did you comprehend wind force? According to my knowledge, martial artists below the void-prying stage are at most able to comprehend the seed of force, and it's impossible for them to comprehend true force. Feng Ping's voice transmission sounded out once more, and it was filled with bewilderment and bewilderment. As far as he was concerned, everything he said was the iron law of Cloud Continent, and he'd never heard of anyone being able to break it. Duan Lingtian being able to break this iron law caused him to be extremely shocked. I don't know as well. Duan Lingtian shook his head and replied via voice transmission. I comprehended as I comprehended. Feng Ping had a dumbstruck expression. What do you mean comprehended as you comprehended? saying it was equivalent to not saying anything. But Feng Ping knew clearly that even if it was him, he wouldn't easily speak of a secret like this. Duan Lingtian being unwilling to speak of it was pardonable. The following journey could be considered to be peaceful. After using almost a month of time, Duan Lingtian followed the ancient river trading company's merchant group and finally arrived nearby their destination. We'll be there in another 5 or 6 days. Feng Ping looked at Duan Lingtian and lightly smiled as he spoke. After witnessing Duan Lingtian's shocking display of power, Francis' attitude towards Duan Lingtian had changed. In Cloud Continent, the strong were respected. Duan Lingtian might not be as strong as him now, but his talent could be said to be unparalleled. With Duan Lingtian's talent, it would not be difficult for Duan Lingtian to catch up with him, or even surpass him in the future. Almost there, Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. As for the change in Francis Ping's attitude, he naturally felt it. In this world where the strong were respected, this was how it was. If you had the strength, you would be looked up to and respected by others. On the other hand, in the eyes of others, they were like lowly grass and ants. 7-star sword sect Migres Peak. Today, an uninvited guest arrived at the cultivation grounds of the outer court elder, Zhao Lin, within a canyon that was filled with light. You are Elder Zhao Lin? The travel-worn young man bowed respectfully to Zhao Lin. You're a member of the ancient river trading company? Zhao Lin's gaze descended onto the symbol on the young man's clothes, and his brows raised. Did my cousin brother send you here? Cousin brother. The young man from the ancient river trading company couldn't help but be stunned when he heard Zhao Lin. My cousin brother is called Zhao Yu. Zhao Lin said. Exactly. It was Elder Zhao Yu who sent me here. Elder Zhao Lin. This is the letter Elder Zhao Yu asked me to send over 1 month ago. The young man from the ancient river trading company withdrew a letter from his spatial ring and passed it over to Zhao Lin. Letter? Zhao Lin received the letter with slight bewilderment. Cousin brother, the future of our Zhao clan depends on you. If we're able to obtain the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll in Duan Lingtian's possession, then our Zhao clan will rise in strength. Zhao Lin's eyes flickered with a bright light. When he found out that Duan Lingtian had gone to the ancient city of Everlast, he wished for nothing more than to rush over himself, but he knew clearly that if he left, he would surely leave behind traces of his tracks. Once Duan Lingtian died outside, it was very likely that others would follow the traces of his tracks and trace it back to him. This was something he wasn't willing to see happen. Cousin brother's strength surpasses mine. I presume it isn't difficult to kill that Duan Lingtian and seize the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. When he thought up to here, Zhao Lin's face revealed a smile. 6 days later, Duan Lingtian's group had finally walked out of the boundless desert, and they'd only just entered the oasis when they could see a city standing in the distance. Elder Feng Ping, that's the destination of our trip? Duan Lingtian looked at Feng Ping who was beside him and asked curiously. Exactly. Feng Ping nodded. When we arrive at the city ahead, the merchant group will go put down the goods in exchange for another batch of goods. At that time we'll return to the ancient city of Everlast using the same route. During this period of time we'll have time to have a proper meal. Duan Lingtian's gaze shone. Along the way, for an entire month, they had not had a proper meal even though they ate the wind and drank the dew. Now they could finally eat a proper meal. The merchant group entered the city. The guard leader brought the merchant group to unload the goods. As for Duan Lingtian, Feng Ping, and the other 3 7-star sword sect disciples, they found a restaurant to eat. The meal was calm and tranquil. Even Zhao Lei didn't cause any trouble. Actually, since Duan Lingtian exerted the strength of 800 ancient mammoths the last time, Zhao Lei was completely terrified and didn't dare be presumptuous before Duan Lingtian. And he was so well behaved that it caused the other 7-star sword sect inner court disciples to exclaim in admiration. They all felt that Zhao Lei had changed. After eating, Duan Lingtian's group once again gathered with the merchant group and left the city to return to the ancient city of Everlast. All along the way, besides cultivating, Duan Lingtian was still cultivating. Time flew by. Almost a month of time had almost passed. On this day, Duan Lingtian awoke from his cultivation, and bright lights flickered within his eyes. Looks like you've improved. Duan Lingtian had just awoken from his cultivation when Feng Ping's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears in a timely manner. Duan Lingtian smiled lightly. Presently, his cultivation had already arrived at the critical point between the 4th level of the nascent soul stage and the 5th level of the nascent soul stage. He only lacked a critical factor before he would be able to smoothly break through to the 5th level of the nascent soul stage. At that time, his strength would increase once more. Once I break through to the 5th level of the nascent soul stage, even if I encounter the saber young master, Long Yun, in a head-on battle, I don't have to fear the strength of his saber force seed any longer. Even if his strength fluctuates to the peak along with the saber force seed, I'll still be able to crush him head-on. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart and was filled with confidence. Elder Feng Ping, how long more until we arrive at the ancient city of Everlast? Duan Lingtian asked Feng Ping. Feng Ping lightly smiled. We ought to be able to arrive in another 4 or 5 days. Now, the people that Elder Zhao Yu and I sent to the 7-star sword sect ought to have already returned. We'll be able to confirm your identity once we return. Duan Lingtian nodded and continued to close his eyes and rest his mind. At practically the exact same time, in the Ancient River Trading Company's branch in the ancient city of Everlast. Elder Zhao Yu, this is the letter that Elder Zhao Lin replied to you. The young man respectfully passed the sealed letter in his hand over to Zhao Yu. Okay, you can leave. Zhao Yu waved his hand and the young man withdrew. Swish. In next to no time, Zhao Yu opened the letter. His gaze descended onto a paragraph of words at the front of the letter, and he was slightly shocked. That Duan Lingtian is really an inner court disciple of our 7-star sword sect? Looks like it was indeed Lei who was too impulsive. Zhao Yu sighed and continued to read. He just entered the 7-star sword sect for less than a year and killed the number 1 disciple in the outer court, sure how, at the age of 20 and became the new number 1 disciple in the outer court? 1 year later, he used a cultivation at the 9th level of the origin core stage to kill the 1st level nascent soul stage inner court disciple, Lu Shirgu. Not long ago, he defeated the demonic Lotus Blade sect's saber young master, Long Yun, and seized the supreme glory of first place for the 7-star sword sect? Zhao Yu's breathing followed his gaze down and became even more hurried. Chapter 417. This Duan Lingtian is a monster. He's simply not human. Zhao Yu couldn't help but be extremely shocked. Duan Lingtian's accomplishments were something that even he couldn't help but be shocked by. When he recalled the conflict between Duan Lingtian and his son, Zhao Lei, when Duan Lingtian had just arrived at the ancient city of Everlast 2 months ago, he couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Looks like Lei can only suffer in silence this time. Not to mention him, even I can't afford to offend that Duan Lingtian. The importance of the current Duan Lingtian to the 7-star sword sect wasn't difficult to imagine. Why are there so many more at the end? In next to no time, Zhao Yu noticed. In the letter that his cousin brother, Zhao Lin, gave him, there was actually a large section of words after describing Duan Lingtian's accomplishments. He continued reading. In next to no time, his pupils couldn't help but constrict. But after he finished reading, his face flushed red and he was inexplicably excited. That Duan Lingtian actually possesses such a peerless cultivation method like the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll? It's able to allow one to be reborn and increase one's natural talent. So it turns out that the reason that Duan Lingtian is so monstrous is entirely because of the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. At the same time that Zhao Yu's feelings surged and were shocked, his eyes emitted burning flames of greed, as if they could incinerate everything. It's exactly as cousin brother Zhao Lin said. Once our Zhao clan obtains the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll, we'll surely rise in strength. When he thought up to here, the greed in Zhao Yu's eyes rose even more. It was difficult to restrain. That Duan Lingtian will be returning with the merchant group in a few days. I ought to prepare and give him a great gift. Zhao Yu's face revealed a slightly insane expression. 7-star sword sect, Dubhe Peak, Alcade Hall. Whoosh! Outside Alcade Hall, the airflow flashed in the sky, and a graceful and beautiful figure appeared out of thin air. This was a beautiful young woman in clothes that were whiter than snow, and her movements revealed an extremely elegant bearing. The white-clothed young woman stood in the sky like a snow lotus that was pure and untainted from mud. causing it to be difficult for one to arouse the intention of profaning her. Suddenly, in the arcade hall, a figure flew out and stood opposite the white-clothed woman. This was a beautiful woman, graceful and noble, natural and unrestrained. "Uncle Master." The woman in white respectfully bowed to the beautiful woman. The beautiful woman was none other than the master of Arcade Hall, the peak master of the 7-star sword sects Arcade Peak Qin Xiang. "You your Schwer?" Qin Xiang asked with uncertainty as she looked at the white-clothed female in front of her. "Uncle Master, it's me." The woman in white smiled faintly. She was like a green lotus that had just bloomed. She was so beautiful that it made people's hearts flutter. Who would have thought that the little girl from back then would grow so big in the blink of an eye? "I still remember that when I saw you a few years ago, you were still a little girl." Qin Xiang recalled the past and sighed. "Are you here because elder sister has something to do with you?" Qin Xiang recovered from her shock and looked at the white-clothed young woman as she asked in a light voice. When she mentioned the word big sister, Qin Xiang's face seemed to be mixed with deep respect. It was a respect that came from the heart and soul. When she recalled the shocking martial strength the young woman revealed when she saved her all those years ago, she still couldn't help but feel a wave of fear. At that time, she was only over 10 years old and hadn't entered the 7-star sword sect. The two old men attacked with imposing auras that shot into the sky like rainbows, and their entire hearts and minds were condensed on their respective attacks, and it was difficult for them to be distracted attacks that contained rage, and they didn't hold back in the slightest. In the sky above the azure-clothed old man, 16 ancient horned dragon silhouettes and a few hundred ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared. In the sky above the gray-clothed old man, 17 ancient horned dragon silhouettes and a few hundred ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared. This was the strongest strength they revealed when their strengths, their respective concepts, and the amplification of the spirit weapons in their hands were added together. The attacks of the two old men were about to descend onto the white-clothed young woman. Qin Xiang's face went ghastly pale. She could imagine that if the white-clothed young woman really died here, the 7-star sword sect would surely be in great turmoil, and even cease to exist. Kerr and Li Fei's beautiful eyes revealed slight unwillingness when they saw this scene, and they were unable to bear to watch the scene of a beauty perishing. At this critical moment, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. The white-clothed young woman's voice calmly sounded out. "I've said it before, both of you aren't a match for me." In the next moment, the white-clothed young woman slowly raised her white wrist. She didn't use a spirit weapon or concept. Pure origin energy leaped out and coiled around her white wrist. As her white wrist descended, the condensed origin energy transformed into a palm print that was condensed into form. In the next moment, whoosh! The palm print suddenly trembled and instantly expanded explosively, and in the blink of an eye, it transformed into the size of a small mountain before crashing down. Bang! As the terrifying palm descended, the air seemed to have been instantly sucked dry, and a terrifying airflow swept out. Chapter 418. The airflow that swept out gave rise to awe-inspiring strong gales that flashed towards the surroundings, and it blew onto Qin Xiang, Kerr, and Li Fei, but they didn't notice it at this moment, and they stared blankly at the scene before them. Bang! The white-clothed young woman's palm descended, and the palm print that transformed into a small mountain seemed to carry along a peerless might as it collided with the attacks of the two old men. In the next moment, along with the two old men letting out muffled groans, their bodies directly flew out, and they seemed to have transformed into arrows that left the bowstring to fiercely collide with the cliff at the side of Dubhe Peak. Instantly, shattered rocks flew out and scattered down the cliff, and not even the slightest echo could be heard. Pooh! Pooh! The two old men spat out a mouthful of blood at practically the exact same time, and they glanced at each other and saw astonishment in each other's eyes. At the same time, their gazes descended onto the sky above the white-clothed young woman in unison. There were currently 20 lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouettes spiraling down from there. She didn't use a spirit weapon, didn't use concept. She only relied on her own origin energy to draw upon the energy of heaven and earth to develop 20 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. Void interpretation stage. She's a void interpretation stage expert. The azure-clothed old man's face went grim, and he slightly lost his composure as he exclaimed in shock. Void interpretation stage. The gray-clothed old man's face revealed bitterness. He knew that the white-clothed young woman had shown mercy earlier. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him and the old fellow by his side to survive at the hands of the white-clothed young woman. Void interpretation stage. Qin Xiang, Ke, and Li Fei were all dumbstruck when they heard the azure-clothed old man's voice. Whoosh! Right at this moment, an exceedingly swift figure charged into the sky. Martial Uncle Xian, Martial Uncle Ming. Ling Hu Jinhong had an astounded expression when he saw the two guardian elders being injured at the same time. Then he looked at the white-clothed young woman. Who the heck are you? What's your objective in coming to my 7-star sword sect? Sect leader. She's a void interpretation stage expert. Meanwhile, the azure-clothed old man, one of the two guardian elders of the 7-star sword sect, Elder Ming, laughed bitterly. Void interpretation stage expert? When Ling Hu Jinhong arrived, the 20 ancient horned dragon silhouettes above the white-clothed young woman had already gradually dissipated. So he didn't know exactly how strong the white-clothed young woman's cultivation was. Now, when he heard Elder Ming's words, his expression completely changed. Void interpretation stage expert. Not to mention the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Even the Darkstone Empire didn't possess such an existence. Furthermore, this white-clothed woman was so young. He'd never heard of such a young void interpretation stage powerhouse in the Dark Han dynasty. Senior brother sect leader. This is all a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Qin Xiang held Ku Er and Li Fei's hands and soared into the sky. She knew that it was time for him to step in. Junior sister Qin Xiang. Ling Hu Ming Ming, Ming. Ming Ling Hu Ming. Senior brother. Ling Hu Lin. Ming. T. J. To Ling Hu Ming. Lint. Is T. Ling Hu Jinhong came to a sudden understanding, and at the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief. As a senior brother that had a good relationship with Qin Xiang, Ling Hu Jinhong had heard of Qin Xiang's fortuitous encounter. Qin Xiang's senior sister seemed to have come from the foreign lands. Experts are really numerous like the clouds in the foreign lands. This white-clothed young woman is so young, yet is already in existence at the void interpretation stage. Before the white-clothed young woman, Ling Hu Jinhong felt a wave of powerlessness. But he knew as well that level wasn't something he could reach. What? In the distance, the azure-clothed old man was stunned. Misunderstanding? The corners of Elder Xian's mouth twitched. This misunderstanding had almost taken the lives of these two old fellows. Little girl, can't you just directly say that you know Qin Xiang? Elder Ming looked at the white-clothed young woman, and his face was filled with a bitter smile. Martial Uncle Ming, I'm sorry. Qin Xiang looked at Elder Ming with an apologetic expression. Schwerer has been obsessed with cultivation since she was young, and doesn't know the ways of the world. I hope that Martial Uncle Xian and Martial Uncle Ming can forgive me. Never mind, since she's one of us, then it means that the 7-star sword sect is fine. This old fellow ought to return as well. I've cultivated for so many years in vain. Yet in the end, I'm far inferior to a little girl. Elder Xian sighed. Then his figure flashed out, seeming to have transformed into a sword that shot into the sky as he concealed himself in the clouds. I'm leaving as well. Elder Ming nodded to Ling Hu Jinhong and Qin Xiang before transforming into a green wind and vanishing without a trace. Sect leader, we ought to leave as well. In next to no time, Qin Xiang noticed that many people had noticed the commotion, and she soared into the sky as she spoke to Ling Hu Jinhong. After that, she brought along Ke and Li Fei before vanishing into the clouds with the white-clothed young woman. Senior brother, Duan Lingtian is the man my disciple has acknowledged. I hope you can protect his safety. Qin Xiang would be extremely grateful. A voice transmission sounded out by Ling Hu Jinhong's ears. Don't worry. Duan Lingtian is related to the future of our 7-star sword sect. I won't let anything happen to him. Ling Hu Jinhong agreed. Sect leader. Sect leader, what happened earlier? Numerous figures soared into the sky, and they were the peak masters and elders of the various peaks of the 7-star sword sect. It's nothing. Ling Hu Jinhong shook his head, and after he dispersed everyone, only Zheng Fan remained. Peak Master Zheng Fan, hand down the matters in your hands these few days. After that, make a trip to the ancient city of Everlast. You must protect Duan Lingtian's safety. For safety's sake. Ling Hu Jin Hong Sen Zheng Fan. The Peak Master of Mizar Peak out. Yes, sect leader. Zheng Fan nodded. Duan Lingtian had shown kindness to him and his son, and no matter if it was for public or private reasons, he was duty-bound in this matter. Ancient city of Everlast. After a few days, Duan Lingtian finally returned with the merchant group and returned to the ancient river trading company's branch. After he returned, Elder Fengping found the person from the ancient river trading company that was sent out. Did you obtain the letter personally written by our 7-star sword sect leader? Elder Fengping. This is the letter personally written by your esteemed sect leader. The person from the ancient river trading company respectfully passed the letter to Fengping. Fengping opened it to look, and his pupils couldn't help but constrict. Duan Lingtian, an inner court disciple of the 7-star sword sect. He just entered the 7-star sword sect for less than a year when he killed the number 1 disciple in the outer court, Shi Hao, at the age of 20, and became the new number 1 disciple in the outer court. 1 year later he killed the first-level nascent soul stage inner court disciple, Lu Shirgu, with a cultivation at the 9th level of the origin core stage. Not long ago, in the martial competition of the 5 great sects, he even defeated the demonic Lotus Blade sect's saber young master, Long Yun, and seized the supreme glory of first place for the 7-star sword sect. After he finished reading, Fengping's face flushed red. Duan Lingtian actually seized the first place in the martial competition of the 5 great sects this time? What a kid, I've actually never heard him mention it. Neither arrogant nor rash. He's indeed a good sapling. Fengping laughed heartily. At practically the same time, Zhao Lei found out about the result of verifying Duan Lingtian's identity from his father, Zhao Yu. At the same time he also found out about Duan Lingtian's deeds in the 7-star sword sect. I never imagined that the background of this Duan Lingtian is so great. Zhao Lei gnashed his teeth with an unwilling expression, yet he was helpless and sighed. Father, don't worry, I won't make it difficult for you. Since this Duan Lingtian is really an inner court disciple of our 7-star sword sect, then I'll bury the humiliation he gave me in the bottom of my heart. No need. Zhao Yu shook his head and smiled. Zhao Lei was stunned, as he didn't know what his father meant. Zhao Yu suddenly stood up and looked outside the courtyard, and after he confirmed that there was no one, he called Zhao Lei into his room. Father, what's so mysterious about? Zhao Lei had a bewildered and curious expression. Lei, you can't tell a third person what father is about to say, understand? Zhao Yu warned with a solemn expression. The more Zhao Yu acted like this, the more curious Zhao Lei was. Father, I know. Quickly tell me. Is it related to that Duan Lingtian? Subsequently, Zhao Yu spoke of everything related to the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll that Zhao Lin spoke of in the letter. The Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll is able to allow one to be reborn and improve one's natural talent to the peak. Zhao Lei's breathing became hurried, and traces of burning desire were emitted from his eyes. Father, doesn't that mean that so long as I cultivate the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll, I'll be able to rely on it to soar into the sky and even possess natural talent similar to Duan Lingtian? Yes. Zhao Yu lightly smiled as he nodded, and then he said, Lei, your uncle and I are already old, and it wasn't easy for us to obtain our void prying stage cultivations. If we want to disperse our cultivations and cultivate the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll, we still have to carefully consider it. You and your cousin are different. So long as we obtain the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll in Duan Lingtian's possession, you and your cousin can directly disperse your cultivations and cultivate. At that time our Zhao clan will surely rise in power. As he finished speaking, Zhao Yu's expression was filled with excitement. Zhao Lei hurriedly nodded and was extremely excited. So it turns out that Duan Lingtian possesses such shocking natural talent and cultivation because he cultivated the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. Zhao Lei's gaze flickered and emitted a vicious expression. Father, what do you plan to do to that Duan Lingtian? Naturally, I'll kill him to avoid future troubles. At the same time, I'll avenge you. Zhao Yu's eyes flashed with a cold light as he spoke bluntly. Thank you, father. A brilliant smile bloomed on Zhao Lei's face, and his vicious eyes contained a frightening cold light mixed within. Duan Lingtian, I'll let you be complacent, I'll let you be arrogant. Very soon, I'll seize everything from you and cultivate the muscle meridian rebirth scroll to stride towards the peak of the martial Tao. Alright, Lei, it's time for us to apologize to Duanling Tian. Zhao Yu said to Zhao Lei. Apologize? Zhao Lei frowned when he heard this, and he had an unwilling and puzzled expression. Father, why do we have to apologize to him? Lei, you can be at ease. That Duanling Tian will surely be unable to escape death. Now, if you apologize to him, firstly, it will show the magnanimity of our Zhao clan, and secondly, if his death is exposed in the future, no one will suspect us. Chapter 419. In the spacious hall of the Ancient River Trading Company's branch, all the members of the Seven-Star Sword sect, including Duanling Tian, were gathered together. Duanling Tian, you really concealed yourself deeply. If I didn't see the sect leader's personal letter, I wouldn't know that you've done so many extraordinary things in less than 3 years after entering our Seven-Star Sword sect. When he saw Duanling Tian once again, Feng Ping's gaze was bright like an array of stars, and his face bloomed with a warm smile. Duanling Tian lightly smiled. He knew clearly in his heart that since Feng Ping obtained the sect leader's personal letter, Feng Ping surely had some understanding of his past. Most importantly, his identity had already been confirmed without a doubt. What Feng Ping said caused the other 2 Seven-Star Sword sect inner court disciples besides Zhao Yu and Zhao Li to have bewildered expressions. Elder Feng Ping, shouldn't you tell us about the contents of the sect leader's personal letter? Yeah, we're extremely interested in the deeds of Duanling Tian as well. The 2 Seven-Star Sword sect inner court disciples looked at Feng Ping and asked with curious expressions, You 2 kids? Feng Ping shook his head and smiled, and he was just about to speak when he was interrupted. Duanling Tian, 7-Star Sword sect inner court disciple. He's just entered the 7-Star Sword sect for less than a year, and killed the number 1 disciple in the outer court, Sure How, at the age of 20 to become the new number 1 disciple in the outer court. 1 year later he killed the first-level nascent soul stage inner court disciple, Lu Shirgu, with a cultivation at the 9th level of the origin core stage. Not long ago, in the martial competition of the 5 great sects, Duanling Tian even defeated the demonic Lotus Blade sect's saber young master, Long Yun, and seized the supreme glory of first place for the 7-Star Sword sect. It was Zhao Yu who took a step forward and finished speaking in one breath. This caused the 2 7-Star Sword sect inner court disciples to be dumbstruck. Although they knew that Duanling Tian's strength was strong, they never imagined that Duanling Tian had such shocking deeds in the 7-Star Sword sect. He'd simply created a precedent in the 7-Star Sword sect. For a time, they looked at Duanling Tian with even more reverence. Duanling Tian. Suddenly, Duanling Tian noticed that after Zhao Yu finished introducing him, he looked at him and said sincerely, Previously, I couldn't confirm your identity as an inner court disciple, so I said some unpleasant things. I hope you won't take it to heart. Elder Zhao Yu is too polite. Seeing how polite Zhao Yu was, Duanling Tian naturally returned a smile. Looks like this Zhao Yu isn't as bad as his son. As a 7-Star Sword sect elder, he was actually willing to lower his head and apologize to an inner court disciple like him. It was rare. Unfilial son, did you forget what I told you on the way here? Why aren't you apologizing? Very quickly, Duanling Tian noticed that Zhao Yu's gaze had shifted from him to Zhao Lei, and there was a trace of anger mixed within. Zhao Lei took a deep breath, looked at Duanling Tian and lowered his head. Duanling Tian, what happened last time was all my fault. I shouldn't have done that. As for what happened after that, I only have myself to blame. In the future I won't bear a grudge against you, and I hope you can let bygones be bygones. Zhao Lei's words caused Duanling Tian to be completely stunned. His first thought was that it was Zhao Yu who forced Zhao Lei to say this, but no matter what the process was, since Zhao Lei was able to speak such words now, it undoubtedly had a slight intention of admitting defeat. He wasn't an unreasonable person, and he smiled indifferently. Senior brother Zhao Lei, although this matter arose because of you, but the way I resolved it in the end was slightly too extreme. I'm sorry. Zhao Lei nodded and silently withdrew. Now it's fine, the storm has passed. Duanling Tian is an inner court disciple of our 7-Star Sword sect, guaranteed to be genuine. Feng Ping laughed heartily and was extremely happy. He was happy that such a monstrous genius had appeared in the 7-star sword sect. Elder Feng Ping, Elder Xiaoyu, I have something that I want to tell both of you in advance. Duan Lingtian looked at Feng Ping and Xiaoyu as he slowly spoke. What is it? Speak. Feng Ping and Xiaoyu looked at Duan Lingtian in unison, and they had an expression that said, no matter what it is, we'll deal with it for you. It's like this. I intend to leave the ancient city of Everlast and wander about by myself for a period of time. Duan Lingtian spoke without the slightest hesitation. He'd already decided on this plan 2 months ago before he'd even left with the merchant group. Now, since his identity had already been confirmed, it was time for him to leave. He kept having the feeling that staying in the ancient city of Everlast wouldn't have any effect of gaining experience in tempering. Perhaps, going out to wander by himself would be able to obtain a better effect of gaining experience in tempering. Duan Lingtian's words caused Feng Ping to frown. Duan Lingtian, the sect leader asked you to come here because he hoped you'd be able to obtain experience in tempering here. Not only that, I think the reason the sect leader made this decision was because he felt that with me and Elder Xiaoyu taking care of you in the ancient city of Everlast, even if you encounter any danger, it would be easily resolved. Yeah, Duan Lingtian. If you wander by yourself and encounter any danger or something happens to you, how do you want us to explain it to the sect leader? Xiaoyu nodded and agreed with Feng Ping. Don't worry, elders, I'll act according to my ability. I'll absolutely not act rashly. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled, and he had an appearance of having made a decision. When they saw Duan Lingtian being so persistent, Feng Ping and Xiaoyu didn't say anything further. Feng Ping had a serious expression as he warned. Duan Lingtian, you must pay attention to your safety when you're outside. You have to know that you're not alone now, and you're shouldering the future of the 7-star sword sect. Yeah, you must be careful. Xiaoyu said as well. Don't worry, elders, I will. Duan Lingtian nodded, then said, since it's like this, then I'll leave right away. There's no rush. Xiaoyu lightly smiled and stopped him. Duan Lingtian, you've just returned today and are covered in dust. Tonight, let us father and son be the host, and we'll have a good meal in a restaurant. It wouldn't be too late for you to leave tomorrow, how about it? All right. Duan Lingtian didn't doubt him and nodded. To him, there wasn't much of a difference if it was a day earlier or a day later. Then we'll properly rip Elder Xiaoyu off tonight. Feng Ping smiled. For a time, the spacious hall was filled with laughter. That night, Xiaoyu and Xiaoyu held a banquet, and everyone that was stationed at the 7-star sword sect's ancient river trading company's branch gathered together. This table of food and wine is to apologize to us father and son, and to send off Duan Lingtian. Xiaoyu raised his wine cup, then glared at Xiao Lei, and the father and son toasted Duan Lingtian together. Elder Xiaoyu, you're too kind. Senior brother Xiao Lei and I got to know each other after a fight. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled as he nodded, then raised his wine cup and toasted Xiaoyu and Xiaoyu. In next to no time, Feng Ping and the other 2 7-star sword sect inner court disciples joined in as well. The 6 of them drank until deep into the night before returning. Duan Lingtian will continue drinking when you return next time. Xiaoyu smiled to Duan Lingtian, then carried the dead drunk Xiao Lei and returned to his own small courtyard. All right, Duan Lingtian replied, then walked shoulder to shoulder with Feng Ping as they headed towards another direction together. Duan Lingtian bid his farewells to Feng Ping and returned to his own small courtyard. After returning to his small courtyard, Duan Lingtian's drunken appearance vanished without a trace, and his originally muddy eyes had recovered their clarity. Big brother Lingtian, that father and son surnamed Zhao are surely plotting something when they suddenly become so amiable. The little gold mouse's voice transmission sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. Little gold, I never imagined that a little fellow like you would even be able to discern this. Duan Lingtian pulled out the little gold mouse from his sleeve and lightly combed her fur, and his eyes flickered with a frightening sheen. That old fox Xiaoyu's acting ability isn't bad, and he almost deceived me. But unfortunately, that idiot son of his gave himself away long ago. Earlier, when he was still in the ancient river trading company's main hall, he'd noticed an inkling from Xiao Lei. When Xiaoyu suggested that he leave tomorrow, he felt that something was off even more. Xiaoyu seemed to be stalling for time. Big brother Lingtian, Why don't we seize this opportunity to leave deep into the night? The little gold mouse suggested via voice transmission. It's fine, we'll leave tomorrow. Let me see what tricks that Zhao Yu can play. Duan Lingtian's eyes went cold, and the corners of his mouth curled into a disdainful sneer. At practically the exact same moment, in a small courtyard on the other side of the courtyard of the Ancient River Trading Company's branch, a bright light flashed within Zhao Yu's muddy eyes, and he didn't have the slightest appearance of being drunk from before. At the same time, Zhao Lei, who was put down by Zhao Yu, woke up with a sober expression. How is this a person that was dead drunk? Father, since that Duan Lingtian is leaving tomorrow, then you can follow him and make a move tomorrow. So long as you kill him and seize the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll in his possession, our good days will come. As Zhao Lei finished speaking, he had an excited expression. No. Zhao Yu shook his head. Not only will I not follow him when he leaves tomorrow, I'll even have tea with Elder Feng Ping. Zhao Lei was dumbstruck. Father, if you don't follow him, then wouldn't he run away? Lei, if I follow him, then once the matter of him being killed is exposed, and I'm not in this Ancient River Trading Company's branch, if the sect really investigates, then they'll surely suspect me. So I'll have tea with Elder Feng Ping tomorrow. Once the sect investigates, Elder Feng Ping can testify for me, and it's impossible for me to follow Duan Lingtian. A fox-like smile appeared on Zhao Yu's face. In this way it's indeed foolproof. But what about the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll? If we let Duan Lingtian escape this time, then we don't know if we'll be able to find such a good opportunity in the future. Zhao Lei frowned, and his face was filled with unwillingness. Lei. Zhao Yu sighed, then stretched out his hand and pointed at his own head. Sometimes you have to use your brain to think. Even if I don't follow Duan Lingtian and pursue him to seize the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll, it doesn't mean that I won't let others kill him and seize the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. To us, it isn't important who killed him. The most important thing is the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. Chapter 420. Dawn. The world awoke. Who? Duan Lingtian, who sat cross-legged on the bed and cultivated for an entire night, heaved a sigh of relief and opened his eyes. Crackle, crackle. Duan Lingtian lightly stretched out his arms, and a wave of light sounds of bones rubbing together sounded out. Just a little bit more, and I'll be able to break through to the 5th level of the nascent soul stage. As he felt his current cultivation, Duan Lingtian's face revealed a satisfied smile. After getting off the bed, Duan Lingtian left the room with little gold. After dealing with the breakfast prepared by the members of the Ancient River Trading Company's branch, Duan Lingtian went to look for Feng Ping and the others to bid farewell and leave. With Feng Ping and Zhao Yu in the lead, the 7-star sword sect members were all present, and they sent Duan Lingtian off with their gazes. They only returned to their senses when Duan Lingtian's figure vanished before their eyes. Elder Feng Ping, President Lan gave me some tea leaves half a month ago. Why don't you come over and try them? Zhao Yu looked at Feng Ping and invited. Feng Ping's gaze shone as he gladly agreed. The tea President Lan gave is surely good tea. Then I'll accept. Along with Zhao Yu and Feng Ping returning to the courtyard, Zhao Lei and the other 2 7-star sword sect inner court disciples returned as well. No one noticed. At this moment, a wisp of an imperceptible evil smile faintly appeared on the corners of Zhao Lei's mouth. On the other side, after Duan Lingtian turned onto the small path, his spiritual force became vigilant. Could it be that I'm thinking too much? At the first possible moment, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force didn't notice any clues, and he couldn't help but think to himself. But when he passed through the small path, he was instead able to notice a gaze that was tightly locked onto him. Needless to say, this person was extremely cautious, and even an ordinary void-prying stage martial artist might not be able to notice him. But unfortunately, Duan Lingtian's career as a weapon specialist in his previous life allowed him to grasp a superb anti-tracking ability, and he noticed this person concealed in the shadows at the first possible moment. Not only that, through his acute spiritual force, Duan Lingtian even detected the cultivation of the person. First level of the void-prying stage? That Zhao Yu really thinks highly of me. Duan Lingtian rubbed his nose as a wisp of an evil smile appeared on his face, And then he shook his sleeve as he said via voice transmission, "Little Gold, help me drag that unlucky fellow out later. Besides that, don't kill him, I want to ask him a few questions." "Great, great." The little gold mouse's voice transmission contained slight joy and excitement mixed within. Duan Lingtian was not surprised by this. In the past 2 months, Xiaojin had never made a move. Perhaps it had been suppressing its anger for a long time now. This fire finally had a place to vent. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian made a detour into a remote alley in the ancient city of Everlast. Relying on his acute spiritual force, Duan Lingtian was able to sense that the first-level void-prying stage martial artist that followed him was still concealed nearby, as if he was ready to wait for an opportunity to make a move against him at any moment. "Xiaojin, drag him out." Duan Lingtian used a voice transmission to tell the little gold mouse the exact location of the first-level void-prying stage martial artist before directly asking her to make a move. Squeak, squeak, the little gold mouse cried out excitedly, then instantly transformed into a golden light that flashed out from Duan Lingtian's sleeve. After a short moment, Duan Lingtian heard a wave of thunderclaps sound out from behind him. It was precisely the little gold mouse's half-step advanced lightning force. In the next moment, bang! Ah! A heavy sound of falling to the ground accompanied by a wave of miserable shrill cries sounded out. Duan Lingtian turned around and he could see a middle-aged man lying on the ground in an extremely sorry state. Beside him was the little gold mouse that stood in the sky, and she held a pocket-sized spirit sword in her hand. "Don't kill me, don't kill me." Even though the little gold mouse was only a tiny thing, yet in the eyes of the middle-aged man, it was like a dreadful beast that caused him to have a panicked expression as he ceaselessly begged for mercy. "Who are you? Why did Zhao Yu send you to follow me?" Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at the middle-aged man as he asked. But the middle-aged man paid no attention to Duan Lingtian, and he still stared at the little gold mouse with an expression of terror and uneasiness. "Little Gold, if he doesn't answer my question within the time of 3 breaths, then casually give him a sword strike." Duan Lingtian frowned when he was disregarded by the middle-aged man, and he spoke to the little gold mouse. Squeak, squeak, the little gold mouse hurriedly nodded when she heard what little Lingtian said, and her jade-green eyes flickered with cold lights, and the pocket-sized spirit sword in her hand flickered with a ghastly sheen of origin energy. "You, all of you." The middle-aged man's face went gloomy. Never had he imagined that this 7-star sword sect inner court disciple he was following would actually be together with this strange mouse-type demon beast. "Zhao Yu, you've really gotten me into trouble." The middle-aged man gnashed his teeth, and his heart suddenly went cold. If I knew earlier that this kid had a demon beast protecting him, then no matter how many benefits that Zhao Yu gave me, I wouldn't have accepted this assignment. "There's another breath of time." Duan Lingtian's voice was calm, as if he was speaking of an unimportant matter. The middle-aged man never imagined that the sudden change in his thoughts would actually waste 2 breaths of time. Now when Duan Lingtian's words entered into his ears, it was like a life-reaping note, and it caused his face to go gloomy. I'll speak. The middle-aged man hurriedly looked at Duan Lingtian as he spoke in panic when he saw the spirit sword in the hand of the mouse-type demon beast that suppressed him erupting with origin energy. Squeak, squeak, the little gold mouse was slightly dejected, and it bared its fangs and brandished its claws at the middle-aged man, as if it was saying to him, "Can you not be so cowardly? I haven't made a move yet. Speak." Duan Lingtian looked at the middle-aged man and spoke indifferently. Yes. The middle-aged man hurriedly nodded. "It was Zhao Yu who promised me many benefits and asked me to come kill you." "Kill me?" Duan Lingtian's face sank, and his eyes emitted cold lights. "Yes." The middle-aged man continued. "He asked me to deal with you, then seize your spatial ring. He said that he didn't want anything else, and only wanted the cultivation method in your possession." Duan Lingtian frowned. At the beginning, he thought that Zhao Yu had only bribed this first-level void-prying stage martial artist to kill him for the sake of taking revenge for his son. But now it would seem that the matter wasn't as simple as he imagined. "What cultivation method?" Duan Lingtian asked. The middle-aged man didn't dare hesitate and hurriedly said, "It seems to be some marrow cleansing and tendon rebirth scroll." No, it seems to be the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll? Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted, and his heart shook greatly. How could that Zhao Yu possibly know of the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll? Besides myself, logically speaking, only the Migres Peak Outer Court Elder, Zhao Lin, knows of this non-existent cultivation method that I fabricated. Right, Zhao Yu, Zhao Lin? Both have the surname Zhao. Could it be that there's some relationship between them? Duan Lingtian's thoughts spun abruptly, and his fierce gaze descended onto the middle-aged man as he said in a low voice, "Since that Zhao Yu asked you to help him do something, I presume you can be considered to be acquainted with him. Do you know of Zhao Yu's background in the Seven-Star Sword sect? I seem to have heard him mention that his cousin grandfather is a guardian elder of the Seven-Star Sword sect." The middle-aged man shivered when he noticed the frightening coldness that flickered on the spirit sword in the little gold mouse's hand, and he spoke of everything he knew. As expected, Duan Lingtian understood, completely understood. So it turned out that Zhao Yu and Zhao Lin were cousins. Perhaps when Zhao Yu sent someone to the Seven-Star Sword sect to inquire about matters related to me, he precisely asked that person to go find Zhao Lin. After that, Zhao Lin knew that I was in the ancient city of Everlast, and he told Zhao Yu about me possessing the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. Zhao Yu also coveted the non-existent muscle tendon changing and marrow cleansing manual that I fabricated. It wasn't difficult for Duan Lingtian to guess all of this. Zhao Lin, Zhao Yu. Since both of you want the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll so much, then I'll give it to both of you. Duan Lingtian seemed to have thought of something, and the corners of his mouth curled into an evil smile. When this evil smile entered into the middle-aged man's eyes, it caused his face to go pale and he said in panic, "Young master, I've told you everything I know. Don't kill me, don't kill me. Don't worry, I won't kill you. So long as you help me do something, then the enmity between us will be written off." Duan Lingtian said indifferently. "Thank you, young master, thank you, young master." The middle-aged man heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly nodded. "Nearby, find a secluded place. I have a use for it." Duan Lingtian calmly swept the middle-aged man with his gaze, then looked at the little gold mouse. Little Gold followed by his side. "If he dares act rashly, then kill him with a single strike of your sword." Squeak, squeak, the little gold mouse hurriedly nodded, then transformed into a golden light that descended onto the middle-aged man's shoulder. The middle-aged man's body stiffened. I don't dare, I don't dare." In next to no time, the middle-aged man helped Duan Lingtian find a secluded inn. Duan Lingtian sat down at the table in the room, then took out a blank and simple small book and a brush, then started to write at a rapid speed. The middle-aged man stood at the side, not daring to move. The little gold mouse lay on his shoulder and looked with interest at Duan Lingtian, who was writing at a rapid speed. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was precisely copying a set of cultivation methods. In the first portion, Duan Lingtian casually found a set of cultivation methods that weren't bad from the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu, and copied the beginning. After that, Duan Lingtian casually made it up. In the blank space in the middle, he added 24 dazzling large words. If you want to practice the following steps, then you must first castrate yourself. If you don't castrate yourself, then it's difficult to succeed. Once you castrate yourself, you'll be reborn. In the end, Duan Lingtian wrote 5 large words in flamboyant calligraphy on the cover of the simple small book, Muscle Tendon Changing and Marrow Cleansing Scroll. The beginning of this set of cultivation methods can be considered to be exquisite, and is sufficient to attract anyone. But without the latter half, you'll be unable to comprehend the essence in the end. I want to see what kind of expression all of you will have when you see those 24 words after dispersing your cultivation and cultivating this set of cultivation methods and becoming enthralled by it. A wisp of an evil smile appeared on Duan Lingtian's face. He believed that at that time, the expressions of the Zhao clan would surely be extremely marvelous. The ink Duan Lingtian used to write this set of muscle tendon changing and marrow cleansing scroll was a top-grade ancient ink, and when coupled with a simple small book, it was difficult to distinguish the authenticity. So long as they see the beginning, they'll surely be enthralled. Chapter 421. After all, any one of the cultivation methods in the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu would be a top treasure in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Duan Lingtian believed. Zhao Lin, Zhao Yu, and the other Zhao clan members wouldn't have any immunity before this cultivation method. Zhao Lin, didn't you always think that I have the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll in my possession? Since you want it so much, then I'll make one for you. When he thought of Zhao Lin, a cold light flashed within Duan Lingtian's eyes. Suddenly, whoosh! Duan Lingtian stood up and looked at the nearby middle-aged man that was trembling with fear. Then he said indifferently, "Take this cultivation method in my possession and give it to Zhao Yu. Just say that you obtained it from killing me. In this way you don't have to offend Zhao Yu." The middle-aged man was slightly hesitant, and his eyes contained slight doubt mixed within. After all, he'd seen this young man writing this cultivation method at a rapid pace with his own 2 eyes. Would a cultivation method written by a young man be able to deceive that old fox, Zhao Yu? He was extremely doubtful in his heart. What? Worried that Zhao Yu will see through it? Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at the middle-aged man, then passed the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll in his hand over. Look through it yourself. The middle-aged man took a deep breath before receiving the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll and starting to look through it. In next to no time, the middle-aged man's eyeballs were completely fixed, and he was completely engrossed in the first half of the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. Time silently flowed by. After 15 minutes, the middle-aged man had only looked at the beginning of the first half, and he was already shocked. This cultivation method. You really want me to give it to Zhao Yu? The middle-aged man felt extremely strange. He was able to discern that this cultivation method was extremely precious, and even he was moved by it. But now, this young man actually wanted to give this cultivation method to Zhao Yu, the person that wanted to kill him. It caused him to be unable to wrap his head around it. I asked you to give it to him, so give it to him. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Little Gold, go with him. If he dares play any tricks, then kill him directly. Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at the middle-aged man as he spoke. Squeak, the little gold mouse nodded excitedly, and the grade 6 spirit sword in her hand revolved with flowing lights, seeming as if it was ready to be sent into the middle-aged man's throat at any moment. The middle-aged man's face was pale. He knew that if he didn't want to die, he could only do as he was told. Otherwise he would definitely die. He'd already made up his mind to leave the ancient city of Everlast after passing this cultivation technique to Zhao Yu, far away from this troublesome place. He had a feeling that the cultivation technique in his hand had something else to it. Although he wasn't familiar with this young man, he could sense that the young man wouldn't be so kind. That Zhao Yu was the one who wanted to kill him. He asked himself if it was him, he would not do such a thing. This cultivation technique must have been tampered with. The middle-aged man thought to himself as he left. Duan Lingtian watched the middle-aged man leave and waited in the inn. He took out a pile of refining materials and prepared to refine a weapon. Last time, I left in a hurry and didn't even have the time to refine a grade 6 spirit sword for myself and those 2 little girls. I'll refine one for myself first. As for those 2 little girls, I'll refine one for them when I have the time. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, and with a flip of his palm, a strand of green flames leaped up. Grade 6 Pill Fire. When the pile of materials came into contact with the pill fire, they transformed into puddles of liquid before finally fusing together. Duan Lingtian's hands flashed, as if transforming into numerous afterimages. The speed of his technique was shocking. If there was a weapon refiner here, he would surely be extremely astonished, because Duan Lingtian's weapon refinement technique was too shocking. In next to no time, when the materials were almost completely refined, Duan Lingtian withdrew the narrow sword he used earlier and fused it into the pile of materials. Subsequently, the violet myrtle flexible sword was thrown in by him as well. Gradually, all the materials transformed into a puddle of liquid and formed into a sword base. In the end, it transformed into a dark violet flexible sword. The flexible sword was thin like a cicada's wing and seemed to not be much different from the violet myrtle flexible sword, but its might couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Duan Lingtian gripped the flexible sword tightly, and with a shake of his hand, his origin energy fused into it. Instantly, his origin energy raged and skyrocketed. Whoosh! Above Duanling Tian, 600 ancient mammoth silhouettes first appeared. Then another 252 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared. A total of 852 ancient mammoth silhouettes. An amplification of 42%. I've exceeded my usual performance. Duanling Tian's face revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. He originally thought that the grade 6 spirit sword in his hand would at most provide an amplification of 41%, but never had he imagined that it was actually able to provide an amplification of 42%. After all, an ordinary grade 6 spirit sword like the narrow sword Duanling Tian used earlier was only able to provide an amplification of 38%. The grade 6 spirit saber, Tearless Knight, in the possession of the 7-star sword Sex Mizar Peak's master, Zheng Fan, was able to provide an amplification of 40%, and it could be said to be the best amongst the best, whereas the grade 6 spirit sword in Duanling Tian's hand had already completely surpassed Tearless Knight. In the entire Cloud continent, he was probably the only person capable of refining a grade 6 spirit sword like this, and he was the only one. After all, even Samsara Emperor Wu had only refined a grade 6 spirit weapon that provided an amplification of 42% all those years ago. This grade 6 spirit sword will probably be my pinnacle creation. Duanling Tian sighed, and the hand that held the flexible sword tightened slightly. In the future, I'll call you Violet Myrtle Flexible Sword. Duanling Tian lightly stroked the body of the flexible sword in his hand, and his gaze was concentrated and gentle, as if he was stroking his lover. Whoosh! Suddenly, a gust of wind howled, interrupting Duanling Tian's thoughts. Duanling Tian felt his shoulders sink, and he didn't have to look to know who had returned. Little Gold, how was it? Did it go smoothly? Big brother Ling Tian, that Zhao Yu was wild with joy when he saw the cultivation method that fellow brought back. From his appearance, he seemed to wish for nothing more than to directly cultivate it. Big brother Ling Tian, what did you do to that cultivation method? The little gold mouse's voice transmission was filled with curiosity. What can I do to it? Duanling Tian shook his head and smiled, as he naturally wouldn't speak the truth. After all, that truth was slightly inappropriate for children. Whereas this little fellow was only 7 or 8 years old this year. And according to humans it was only a little kid. Big brother Ling Tian, could it be that you're really so kind as to pass down the cultivation method to them? The little gold mouse obviously didn't believe him. Alright, you little brat. Let's go, we ought to leave as well. Duanling Tian shook his head and smiled, then brought along the little gold mouse to leave the ancient city of Everlast. After exiting the ancient city of Everlast, he whistled and a black figure descended from the horizon. It was precisely the first-level nascent soul stage fierce beast, Sun Eagle. Let's go. Duanling Tian sat cross-legged on the back of the Sun Eagle and was brought along by the Sun Eagle as it flashed forward, and the 7-star sword sect inner court disciple attire on his body fluttered with the wind. On his shoulder, the little gold mouse stood there and curiously looked left and right, and she was filled with curiosity towards everything in the surroundings. Ancient City of Everlast, Ancient River Trading Company's branch. Zhao Yu, who was beaming with joy, walked into a small courtyard, and his tone contained slight excitement mixed within. Father! In next to no time, Zhao Lei opened the door and welcomed Zhao Yu in. After he closed the door, Zhao Lei had an excited expression. Father, you seem so happy, could it be that you've succeeded? Look. Zhao Yu passed the simple small book in his hand to Zhao Lei. Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. Zhao Lei's gaze lit up when he saw the cover of the small book, and he was slightly excited. Father, are you sure? Don't worry. Father has seen the first portion, it's incomparably profound, and is absolutely an authentic cultivation method. In the entire Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, no, even in the entire Darkstone Empire and Darkhan Dynasty, there might not be such a miraculous cultivation method. Zhao Yu's face was covered in a brilliant smile. Now, I can finally understand why that Duanling Tian is able to possess such natural talent and strength at such an age. It's all because of this Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll. Great! In the future, the life of Zhao Lei will completely change. Zhao Lei took a deep breath and suppressed the excitement in his heart. Then he looked at Zhao Yu and asked, Father, that Duanling Tian? Don't worry, I've already dealt with him. Otherwise, where do you think this muscle meridian rebirth scroll came from? As Zhao Yu finished speaking, he laughed heartily. Lei Father has thought it through. You depart today and rush back to the 7-star sword sect. Then take this muscle meridian rebirth scroll to look for your uncle. Your uncle's cultivation place is one of the 9 great spirit points of the 7-star sword sect. And it's even more suitable for you to disperse your cultivation and cultivate this muscle meridian rebirth scroll. Uncle. Zhao Lei's gaze shone. He naturally knew who the uncle his father spoke of was, as that was a figure of authority in the 7-star sword sect, one of the 2 great guardian elders of the 7-star sword sect. People called him Elder Ming. Yes, father. Zhao Lei hurriedly nodded. In next to no time under Zhao Yu's arrangement, Zhao Lei rode on a nascent soul stage flying beast all the way to the 7-star sword sect. Zhao Lei's mood surged. It was as if he'd already seen his insufferably arrogant future at another direction of the ancient city of Everlast. Whoosh! High above in the sky, an enormous flying beast flashed past with an extremely swift speed. If one looked carefully, one would be able to discern that this flying beast was a first-level nascent soul stage fierce beast, the Sunhawk. On the back of the Sunhawk, a young man in violet casual clothes sat cross-legged. The young man had his eyes closed in meditation, and was obviously cultivating. Whereas on the head of the Sunhawk, there was a little golden ball of fur curled up there, and it was a fluffy and chubby little gold mouse. The little gold mouse stood on the head of the Sunhawk, and sent a voice transmission to urge the Sunhawk. Quickly, quickly, quickly. Aya, you're too slow. If you're any slower, I'll ask Big Brother Ling Tian to stew you and eat you. The Sunhawk was a nascent soul stage fierce beast after all, and it had begun to possess human nature. When it heard the little gold mouse's voice transmission, its sharp eyes had slight helplessness and terror mixed within. Little Gold, you're bullying the Sunhawk again? Suddenly, the violet-clothed young man on the back of the Sunhawk opened his eyes that emitted bright lights. At this instant, there seemed to be something extra on the young man's body. Chapter 422. Big Brother Ling Tian, you're awake? The little gold mouse's figure flashed to descend onto the violet-clothed young man's knee. Then she raised her little head to look at Duan Ling Tian and said via voice transmission, Big Brother Ling Tian, you seem to be slightly different. Yes, I've broken through. The violet-clothed young man, Duan Ling Tian, nodded with a smile. Exactly, he'd broken through. He'd officially broken through to the 5th level of the nascent soul stage. Little Gold, where are we now? Duan Ling Tian asked the little gold mouse. The little gold mouse shook her little head and said via voice transmission, I don't know. You don't know? The corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth twitched. Then he looked at the sun eagle beneath him and whistled to make the sun eagle descend. Instantly, the sun eagle's figure shook before diving down. Swoosh! The sun eagle carried Duan Ling Tian and the little gold mouse, and it seemed to have transformed into an arrow that left the bow as it swiftly tore through the sky. Duan Ling Tian looked down at the ground, and only now did he notice that he'd arrived in the sky above a desolate mountain range. What's this place? Duan Ling Tian had a bewildered expression. Then he pondered for a moment. At the beginning, the sun eagle headed north all the way. Little Gold, how long have I cultivated? Duan Ling Tian looked at the little gold mouse and asked, 20 days. The little gold mouse replied via voice transmission. So long? No wonder I feel slightly hungry. Duan Ling Tian rubbed his dry and flat stomach. Then he made the sun eagle descend into the desolate mountain range. After hunting a few wild beasts, Duan Ling Tian started a fire on the spot. Subsequently, he started roasting meat. The fragrance of meat quickly suffused the air, causing Duan Ling Tian's appetite to be aroused. Duan Ling Tian withdrew a spirit sword and slashed a few times on the thick and heavy meat. Then he sprinkled some ordinary seasoning on it. Instantly, the fragrance was oppressive. Sun Eagle, you've worked the hardest amongst the 3 of us. Eat this piece of meat first. Duan Ling Tian passed the meat in his hand to Sun Eagle. But in next to no time, Duan Ling Tian noticed that the little gold mouse's jade-green eyes were staring at Sun Eagle. On the other hand, even though the Sun Eagle coveted the roasted meat in Duan Ling Tian's hand, it didn't dare make the slightest movement for a long time. as if it was deeply afraid that the little gold mouse would pounce over and roast it as well. You little brat, you're really overbearing. Eat. Duan Lingtian was slightly helpless as he passed the roasted meat in his hand to the little gold mouse. The little gold mouse glanced at Sun Eagle once more with an expression that seemed to say, at least you're sensible, and then she received the roasted meat and started to gnaw on it. Duan Lingtian continued to roast the meat. When both his and Sun Eagle's stomachs were full, night slowly descended. Let's spend the night here. We'll leave early tomorrow morning. Duan Lingtian spoke to the little gold mouse. Then he asked Sun Eagle to conceal itself in the sky, and he casually found a withered large tree before lying down on an enormous tree trunk. The little gold mouse leaped onto the nearby tree trunk and fell asleep in next to no time. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse, and the gentle moonlight sprinkled down to envelop Duan Lingtian. 3 months have already passed since I left the 7-star sword sect the last time. According to my knowledge, the Darkstone Empire seems to be north of the ancient city of Everlast. If Sun Eagle flew at full speed all the way north for 20 days, then wouldn't it mean that the land beneath my feet already belongs to the territory of the Darkstone Empire? Duan Lingtian looked at the bright moon that hung in the night sky, and he thought in his heart. The moon today was especially round. Unconsciously, Duan Lingtian thought of the Mid-Autumn Festival and thought of reunions. In his previous life as an orphan, the Mid-Autumn Festival was completely meaningless to him, because he didn't have any relatives to reunite with. It was different in this life. He had a mother that doted on him, and 2 fiancés that he cherished like his life. Unknowingly, I've already left the Crimson Sky Kingdom for over 3 years. I wonder how mother is now. After Duan Lingtian thought of his mother, Li Ro, of this life, his thoughts couldn't be restrained. The 2-year agreement between me and Zither young master is in 9 months. After I carry out this 2-year agreement, I'll take Kerr and Little Fei to make a trip back to the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Duan Lingtian decided on a plan in his heart. His thoughts drifted and unknowingly, Duan Lingtian fell into a deep sleep. At dawn the next day they set out once again. Sun Eagle flew continuously for 5 days, yet it still hadn't flown out of this desolate and uninhabited area. Too slow, too slow. In the end, the little gold mouse was completely impatient, and sent a voice transmission to Duan Lingtian. Big brother Lingtian, this fellow's speed is too slow. Let me take you flying. Duan Lingtian nodded. Little gold speed far surpassed Sun Eagle by more than 10 times. Presumably, it wouldn't be long before they would be able to leave this desolate and uninhabited area. Whoosh! The little gold mouse stood in the air and instantly grew in size like a small mountain that was 3 meters tall. Duan Lingtian took advantage of this opportunity to descend onto the little gold mouse's back. Right when Duan Lingtian intended to call Sun Eagle, the little gold mouse turned around to look at Sun Eagle, and flowing lights revolved within her jade-green eyes. Duan Lingtian understood that little gold ought to be communicating with Sun Eagle. In the end, he saw a wisp of terror first appear within Sun Eagle's pair of sharp eyes. Then subsequently, Sun Eagle glanced at him before spreading its wings, turning around and flying towards the direction they came from. Duan Lingtian was stunned. Little Gold, what did you say to Sun Eagle? Big brother Lingtian, I asked it to return to its hometown. Otherwise, I'll stew it and eat it. The little gold mouse's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. It caused Duan Lingtian's expression to freeze. The voice that was pleasing to the ear like that of a little girl revealed the feeling of a little devil. Little Gold, you drove Sun Eagle back to the primeval forest, then I'll be relying on you to carry me in the future. Duan Lingtian smiled. If the little gold mouse was willing to carry him, then the efficiency wouldn't be just a little bit higher. Carry me then. It's better than letting that fellow get on my back. I'm a jade-eyed heavenly mouse, a descendant of a sacred beast. Duan Lingtian entered the city, and he was able to see that on the main road of the city, streams of people flowed endlessly. Squeak squeak. The little gold mouse wasn't willing to hide under Duan Lingtian's sleeve, and it stood on Duan Lingtian's shoulder as it curiously sized up everything before its eyes. Although the combination of a man and mouse was strange, it didn't draw the attention of others. Duan Lingtian noticed as well. There was no lack of martial artists that brought along fierce beasts amongst the passers-by. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian saw a restaurant appear ahead, and his gaze lit up. Little Gold, let's go to this restaurant to have a meal. Okay. The little gold mouse's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, and it was extremely excited. Duan Lingtian entered the restaurant, and he was able to see that the restaurant was practically filled to the brim. Fortunately, there was a table of customers that had just finished eating not too far away from Duan Lingtian, and they stood up and left. My luck isn't bad. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. Swoosh! Whereas the little gold mouse that stood on his shoulder directly flashed out to descend onto the table. Right when Duan Lingtian was only a foot away from the table before him. Haha. My luck isn't bad, there just happens to be an empty table. A slightly sharp voice sounded out, and Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed. Yet he saw a young man with a thin figure that was like skin and bones take the initiative to sit before the table. Chapter 423. Meanwhile, another young man with a medium build sat opposite the thin young man. From the beginning until the end, the two of them had taken Duan Lingtian to be nothing. Squeak squeak. Meanwhile, the little gold mouse looked angrily at the two young men as it bared its fangs and brandished its claws. But the fluffy and chubby little gold mouse pretended to be ferocious, yet didn't have the slightest deterrent force. What? Little mouse, you want to play with us? The thin young man looked at the little gold mouse and asked with a smile. He only thought that this was an ordinary pet mouse, squeak squeak, but the thin young man's words were like a fuse that completely infuriated the little gold mouse. The little gold mouse swung its tail and just happened to descend onto a teacup on the table. Instantly. Slap. The teacup flew out and flashed directly towards the thin young man. Bang! The thin young man wasn't prepared in the slightest and his face was smashed, causing the remaining tea in the teacup to splash all over his face. Ha 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 ha. The customers at the surrounding tables couldn't refrain from roaring with laughter when they saw this scene. Alright, little gold, let's go to another restaurant. When he saw the restaurant was packed with people, Duan Lingtian looked at the little gold mouse and called out to her. He'd just arrived and didn't want to cause trouble, although he'd seen through the cultivations of these two young men since long ago and wasn't afraid of them. However, the actions of the little gold mouse from before had undoubtedly helped him vent his anger, and it caused the dissatisfaction in his heart to vanish without a trace. Squeak squeak. Unexpectedly, the little gold mouse was instead unwilling to leave. She stood on the table and stood up like a human, then hugged her forelimbs as she looked provocatively at the thin young man. Little mouse, you're courting death. The thin young man was enraged, and his origin energy roared as his hand enveloped out, seeming to have transformed into a cattail leaf fan that slapped down towards the little gold mouse. Above the thin young man, 400 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed out of thin air. Third level of the nascent soul stage. Squeak! The little gold mouse cried out lightly as her tail flashed out like a bolt of lightning to intercept the palm strike of the thin young man that slapped down. Slap! At the instant the little gold mouse's tail touched the thin young man. The thin young man's shrill cry accompanied by the sound of bones breaking sounded out at almost the exact same moment. You're courting death. The companion of the thin young man, another young man with a medium build, had obviously never imagined that the little gold mouse would possess such strength, and his face went grim as he made a move as well. This young man's strength was stronger than the thin young man, and he was a 5th level nascent soul stage martial artist. But unfortunately, this little bit of strength was nothing before the little gold mouse, and he was directly swept flying by the little gold mouse's tail before crashing to the ground. What a terrifying beast! I'm utterly unable to clearly see exactly how many ancient mammoth silhouettes there are in the sky above this little gold mouse. A 3rd level nascent soul stage martial artist and a 5th level nascent soul stage martial artist weren't a match for it. Moreover, based on how it attacks so cleanly and casually, its strength is at least at the 7th level of the nascent soul stage. The group of people in the restaurant sighed with emotion one after another, and the gazes they shot at the little gold mouse were filled with slight burning desire. There were also many people who looked at Duan Lingtian enviously. The two young men that were taught a lesson by the little gold mouse felt they'd lost face, and they left the restaurant dejectedly. You little fellow, Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled, then sat down. At a nearby table, the eyes of a young woman that was a little over 20 shone. What a formidable little gold mouse. What? Little Lou, you like that mouse? The slanted brows of the young man in embroidered clothes that sat opposite the young woman raised, and his eyes emitted a trace of adoration. The young woman stuck out her tongue. I like it, but unfortunately, it already has an owner. Isn't that simple? The young man in embroidered clothes stood up and walked directly towards Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian had only just sat down and found a waiter to order some dishes when he noticed a young man in embroidered clothes walking over. Hey, how much is this mouse of yours for? In next to no time, the young man in embroidered clothes glanced indifferently at Duan Lingtian as he asked. Between his words, there was an unquestionable condescending tone. Squeak, squeak. The little gold mouse glared at the young man in embroidered clothes as it bared its fangs and brandished its claws, and it was extremely furious. As for Duan Lingtian, he utterly couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the young man in embroidered clothes, and he stretched out his hand to stroke the little gold mouse's fur as he said with a light smile, Little Gold, you should change this rash temper of yours. You have to be more ladylike, understand? Ladylike? What's ladylike? When the little gold mouse heard Duan Lingtian, she couldn't help but turn around to look at Duan Lingtian as she asked via voice transmission. Ladylike has a meek disposition and won't lose her temper. For the sake of not allowing others to see that he was able to communicate with the little gold mouse, Duan Lingtian intentionally replied via voice transmission. It's a female? Right at this moment, a young woman that was a little over 20 had appeared by the side of the young man in embroidered clothes. The young woman had a delicate and pretty appearance, and although she couldn't be considered to be a top beauty, she was rather beautiful and lovable. Presently, the young woman looked at the little gold mouse with a gaze that was filled with burning desire. Kid, I'm the Phoenix Nest City's Chong Clan's Chong Hui. Name a price and sell this mouse to me. The young man in embroidered clothes looked at Duan Lingtian as he spoke once more, and his gaze was condescending as he looked down at Duan Lingtian. Not selling. Duan Lingtian didn't even raise his head as he continued stroking the little gold mouse's fur. The little gold mouse's fur was soft to the touch, and it was extremely comfortable to touch. Whereas the little gold mouse lay on the table in enjoyment, but its jade green eyes stared at the young man in embroidered clothes at all times, and its eyes seemed to contain slight rage mixed within. It was the descendant of the sacred beast, the jade-eyed heavenly mouse. This human actually called it a mouse. If it hadn't recalled that Duan Lingtian had asked it to be ladylike earlier, it would have swept its tail over long ago and swept this detestable human flying. What? Are you not giving face to me, Chong Hui, and not giving face to our Chong clan? Chong Hui's voice suddenly became low and high, and it spread throughout the entire restaurant. Instantly, the crowd of customers in the restaurant were alarmed. He's the Chong clan's second young master, Chong Hui? I heard long ago that the Chong clan's second young master is a martial maniac, and possesses a cultivation at the 7th level of the nascent soul stage at the mere age of 29. I never imagined that I would be able to see him in this restaurant. Could it be that the young woman by his side is his fiancée, the Qian clan's third young miss, Qian Lu? She should be. The restaurant was stirred because of Chong Hui's words. Duan Lingtian raised his head and calmly swept Chong Hui with his gaze. You think that by revealing your identity, you'll be able to satisfy your vanity and make me retreat in the face of difficulties and sell it to you? I'll say it one last time, not selling. Duan Lingtian's tone was resolute and decisive. You! Chong Hui flew into a rage out of humiliation, and the origin energy on his body roiled as the energy of heaven and earth roiled above him before finally converging into 1,100 ancient mammoth silhouettes that were accumulating force and waiting to be deployed. 8th level of the nascent soul stage. Second young Master Chong has broken through again? Second young Master Chang's natural talent is truly monstrous. In our Phoenix Nest City, besides the daughter of the city governor, there's probably no one in the younger generation that can compare to him. A 29-year-old 8th level nascent soul stage martial artist. Even in the entire Darkstone Empire, such natural talent can be considered to be above average. The Chong clan's luck is really good to have produced such a genius in the martial Dao. The group of people within the restaurant were all shocked by the strength Chang Hui revealed. What? You still want to make a move? Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged as he indifferently swept Chang Hui with his gaze. So what if I am? Chang Hui shouted out explosively, and with a raise of his hand, his origin energy roared as if it had transformed into a white-crimson snake that coiled around his right arm. Bang! He punched out, and the sound of air exploding rose and fell continuously as the white-crimson snake flashed out to bite Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian had a calm expression, as if he didn't take Chang Hui's punch seriously in the slightest. But his hand that he placed on the little gold mouse had unknowingly been withdrawn. Squeak! Suddenly, a sharp cry sounded out, and it caused the expressions of the group of customers within the restaurant to go pale. Some people with comparatively lower cultivations even went ghastly pale, as if they'd suffered an extremely great blow. It was Little Gold that cried out loudly in rage. At the same time, Little Gold's tail swept out once more, and the air seemed to have been sucked out as it moved to intercept Chang Hui's punch that blasted out. The white-crimson snake that poured out from Chang Hui's fist was shattered by Little Gold's tail. Not only that, Little Gold's tail quickly descended onto Chang Hui's fist. Bang! An enormous bang sounded out, accompanied by a shrill cry and the clear sound of bones shattering and exploding. Immediately after, dazzling blood spurted out from Chang Hui's fist, turning into beautiful red roses in the air and slowly falling to the ground. Bang! As for Chang Hui, he was swung flying by the little gold mouse's tail. His fist had completely vanished, and only half of his arm that was badly mangled remained. Obviously, Chang Hui's fist and more than half of his arm were directly shattered by Little Gold's tail. Demon Beast. It's a demon beast. The group of people within the restaurant stared blankly at the 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes that were gradually dispersing above the little gold mouse, and they were completely dumbstruck. Void-prying stage demon beast. Chang Hui, who'd stopped the blood of his severed arm with great difficulty, had a ghastly pale face as he looked at the 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes gradually disappearing, and his eyes revealed terror. He'd never imagined that this mouse was actually a formidable demon beast. Brother Hui. Qianlu's beautiful face went grim as she hurriedly went over to help Chang Hui up, and the gaze she looked at the little gold mouse with when she looked at it was completely different. Demon beast. This cute little golden mouse was actually a demonic beast. With just a swing of its tail, it crippled one of her fiancé's arms. Little Lu, let's go. Chang Hui took a deep breath, then left with Qianlu. When they left, the gaze Chang Hui shot at Duan Lingtian was suffused with slight coldness and fear. This young man had a demon beast by his side, and his background was obviously extraordinary. After Chang Hui and Qianlu left, the gazes of everyone in the restaurant moved away from Duan Lingtian and the little gold mouse, as they were deeply afraid that if they continued watching, they would suffer a calamity. That was a demon beast, an existence comparable to a void-prying stage expert. It wasn't something they could offend. It's finally quiet. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he looked at the little gold mouse and lightly smiled. Little Gold, well done. Squeak squeak. Chapter 424. In next to no time the food was served. After Duan Lingtian casually ate a little, he concentrated on looking at the little gold mouse wolfing down the food. The little fellow's body looked to be small, yet it was a huge eater. This caused many people in the restaurant to click their tongues in wonder. Suddenly, a wave of discussion sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. Quickly finish eating, and we'll be able to rush over to watch the groom search competition before the city governor's daughter ends. The strength of the city governor's daughter is too strong. Not to mention young geniuses below the age of 25. Even if it's the young geniuses below the age of 30 in our Darkstone Empire, I'm afraid only a few are her match. Today is the last day of the groom search competition. Practically all the young geniuses in the surroundings of our Phoenix Nest City have rushed over. But in my opinion, even if it's the last day, I'm afraid no one is able to defeat the city governor's daughter and become the son-in-law of the city governor. The city governor's requirements are too high. A person below the age of 25 that can defeat his daughter, even in the entire Darkstone Empire, or even the Dark Han dynasty, such a person is probably in existence that's rare like phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. The two people that were in discussion hurriedly finished their food and left. Groom search competition? Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. He never imagined that he would encounter a plot that only appeared in martial arts novels of his previous life. In next to no time, another few people walked into the restaurant, and they sighed with emotion as they walked. I wonder exactly what cultivation the city governor's daughter possesses. Today, that young man around the age of 24 or 25 with a cultivation at the 4th level of the nascent soul stage was actually defeated by her. That young man is the person with the strongest strength amongst all the people that participated in the groom search competition. I never imagined that he would still be defeated by the city governor's daughter in one go. The city governor's daughter is strong when facing a strong opponent, and she seems to have not used her full strength until now. Looks like no one is able to win the heart of the beauty. Beauty? According to my knowledge, the city governor's daughter wears a veil all day. Could it be that you've seen her true appearance? I wonder if she's a beauty or an ugly girl. So what if she's an ugly girl? Being able to become the son-in-law of the city governor and obtain the soul transformation fruit is undoubtedly a fortune. Soul transformation fruit? Duan Lingtian wasn't sad at first, but when he heard one of them mention the soul transformation fruit, his expression changed and he stood up abruptly. Big brother. Duan Lingtian looked at the middle-aged man and asked politely, "Did you just say soul transformation fruit?" When the middle-aged man saw that Duan Lingtian was so polite, he nodded and said with a calm expression, "That's right, it's the soul transformation fruit. Why, little brother, are you interested in the soul transformation fruit?" "Yes." Duan Lingtian nodded and then asked, "I heard Big Brother say that you have a way to obtain the soul transformation fruit." The middle-aged man nodded, "That's right. In these past 10 days, the Lord City Governor has held a martial competition to find a spouse for his unmarried daughter, and today is the last day. So long as you defeat the City Governor's daughter in the martial competition, then not only will you become the Lord City Governor's son-in-law, you'll even be able to obtain the soul transformation fruit. Supposedly, this soul transformation fruit is a good thing. If it's consumed by an inscription master, then it's even able to allow one spiritual force to advance by a level." As he finished speaking, the middle-aged man sized Duan Lingtian up from top to bottom. "Little brother, based on your age, you're only slightly older than the city governor's daughter. However, I advise you to put away this thought. Even though you satisfy the conditions to enter the martial competition for the city governor's daughter, the city governor's daughter has revealed a cultivation at the 5th level of the nascent soul stage. Moreover, she seems to be holding back." "Thank you, big brother." Duan Lingtian thanked the middle-aged man, then threw down the silver before leaving the restaurant in a hurry with the little gold mouse. "Big brother Lingtian, I haven't finished eating yet." The little gold mouse's voice transmission contained slight dissatisfaction mixed within. "I'll let you eat your fill later. I have some urgent things to do now." Duan Lingtian spoke hurriedly. After leaving the restaurant, Duan Lingtian found a passerby and asked about the location of the martial competition for the city governor's daughter before hastily rushing over. He wasn't interested in the city governor's son-in-law in the slightest. What he was interested in was the soul transformation fruit. If it was said that ordinary spirit fruits could only be chanced upon by luck to a martial artist, then the soul transformation fruit was even rarer. The soul transformation fruit was a spirit fruit that was capable of improving the level of the soul, and its proportion amongst the numerous spirit fruits in Cloud Continent didn't exceed 1%. Even though my cultivation has improved greatly, but my spiritual force seems to have completely fallen into a bottleneck, and I've been unable to break through to the void prying stage for a long time. The martial competition for a spouse was carried out before the city governor's estate. When Duan Lingtian arrived before the martial competition arena, his state of mind fluttered. His spiritual force had long since arrived at the critical point between the nascent soul stage and the void prying stage, yet it was unable to break through. Because of this, he was at a loss and helpless. Now he saw the light of hope. If there's really a soul transformation fruit, then once I consume it, my soul will transform and advance to the next level, the void prying stage. At that time, my spiritual force will become strong once again, and I'll be able to inscribe even higher-level inscriptions. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian's mood surged. Even though there were numerous exceedingly formidable inscriptions in the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu, but Duan Lingtian's spiritual force was limited, and it was difficult for him to inscribe those formidable inscriptions. It was like having an empty treasure mountain, yet not having the tools to excavate it. All along, this feeling had caused Duan Lingtian to be extremely displeased. Martial competition for a spouse? Fun. Big brother Lingtian, you want to marry the city governor's daughter. Aren't you afraid of Big Sister Kerr and Big Sister Fayer getting angry? The little gold mouse's voice transmission was filled with excitement, and as she finished speaking, she wished for the world to be in chaos. Duan Lingtian glared at the little gold mouse. I don't have the slightest interest in that city governor's daughter. I only want to obtain that soul transformation fruit. Ordinary spirit fruits were things that could only be chanced upon by luck, and were priceless. The soul transformation fruit was a spirit fruit that accounted for less than 1% of the spirit fruits that could improve the soul, and it was even more something that could only be chanced upon by luck. Now, since Duan Lingtian had encountered it, he wouldn't easily miss it. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian arrived at his destination. A high platform stood before the city governor's estate, and it was extremely spacious. It was precisely the groom search competition's combat arena. Streams of people flowed in the vicinity of the combat arena, and it was extremely bustling, and shouts rose and fell continuously without end. The groom search competition is split into 10 days, and today is already the last day. Our Phoenix Nest City, and even the tens of cities in the surrounding area actually doesn't have a single young genius below the age of 25 that's a match for the city governor's daughter. I heard the city governor's daughter is only 20 years old. Possesses a mysterious and unfathomable cultivation at the age of 20. Shocking. Until now, there's only someone that forced her to utilize the strength of a 5th-level nascent soul stage martial artist. Yeah, even then she seems to still be holding back. A group of people discussed animatedly before the city governor's estate. At this moment, on the groom search competition's combat arena, the mysterious city governor's daughter stood there slender and elegant, and a pair of soft hands that were white like jade were exposed. She wore a fiery red veil that perfectly accentuated her graceful figure, causing one to be unable to refrain from daydreaming. The city governor's daughter wore a fiery red veil on her face, and only a pair of beautiful eyes that were like autumn water was revealed. Her beautiful hair that drooped down was like a drooping willow that lightly brushed with the wind. Even though she was amidst a sea of people, she still gave one a tranquil and peaceful feeling. Although I can't see her appearance clearly, but merely based on this bearing, it's sufficient to move one's heart. A woman with such a bearing, I presume the appearance beneath the veil wouldn't be too bad. Duan Lingtian's heart shook. Merely in terms of bearing, amongst the women by Duan Lingtian's side and even amongst the women he knew, there weren't many that could compare to this city governor's daughter. Under his curiosity, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out, wanting to pry into the depths of this city governor's daughter. According to the information he'd obtained up until now, the city governor's daughter was only 20 years old and possessed an extraordinary cultivation. Up until now, she'd revealed a cultivation at the 5th level of the nascent soul stage, but she seemed to still be holding back. The advancement of my cultivation can be considered to be swift. In the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, it's second to none. I never imagined that I'd actually encounter a genius in the martial Tao, whose cultivation has advanced faster than mine in a city in a remote area of the Darkstone Empire. At the same time that Duan Lingtian's spiritual force flashed, he sighed with emotion in his heart. If the cultivation of this city governor's daughter wasn't attained by relying on spirit fruits alone, in terms of natural talent, she would absolutely not be inferior to him. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force hadn't even touched the city governor's daughter, when he couldn't help but be greatly shocked in his heart. Because at this moment, an even stronger spiritual force seemed to have noticed his spiritual force, and it directly pressed down towards him. Inscription Master. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted, as he never imagined that there was such a formidable inscription master by the side of the city governor's daughter. The spiritual force of this inscription master was more than a level stronger than him. Instantly, Duan Lingtian didn't dare hesitate in the slightest, and he hurriedly withdrew his spiritual force. That formidable spiritual force seemed to have no intention of fuss about it with Duan Lingtian, and it didn't pursue after Duan Lingtian's spiritual force withdrew. Fortunately, he showed mercy, otherwise my soul would surely be injured. Duan Lingtian felt a wave of fear in his heart, and at the same time, he realized his own rashness. According to the memories of the Samsara Emperor Wu, he knew very well that even if it was an inscription master, he didn't dare rashly utilize his spiritual force to spy on another. This was a taboo. Whereas he hadn't encountered any formidable inscription masters all along the way, so he tossed the taboo in this portion of the memories of the Samsara Emperor Wu to the back of his mind. Now he'd left the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and instead encountered a truly formidable inscription master in the Darkstone Empire. Duan Lingtian's gaze started to sweep through the crowd, as he wanted to find the owner of that formidable spiritual force that stretched out. But no matter how he searched, he didn't notice a trace of that person. That person seemed to have appeared out of thin air. Could it be that this inscription master has come for the soul transformation fruit as well? Chapter 425. In the sky above the arena of the groom search competition, outside the city governor's estate. Behind the clouds and mist were two figures that stood in the sky. One of them was a middle-aged man that wore a crimson-red robe with golden edges. The middle-aged man had a firm expression as he stood there with a dignified expression between his brows, and he imperceptibly gave others a sense of oppression. An old man that was over 70 years old stood in the sky by the middle-aged man's side. Interesting. The muddy eyes of the old man that wore gray clothes and had a calm expression lit up abruptly, and it was as if he discovered a new continent. Elder Kong, what did you notice? The middle-aged man asked curiously. Eldest young master, perhaps. The person in the young Miss Destiny has appeared. The gray-clothed old man spoke slowly with an unfathomable expression. Elder Kong, what you mean is? The middle-aged man's eyes squinted as he had an astounded expression. On the arena of the groom search competition, the city governor's daughter stood there elegantly. Even though there were numerous people in the surroundings of the arena, most of them had come to watch the show, and no one went up for a long time. Let me experience the strength of the city governor's daughter. Along with an explosive shout, a swift figure flashed up onto the arena. This was a young man around the age of 25 or 26 with a handsome appearance, and there was a trace of arrogance between his brows. You're over the age limit. Get off. The city governor's daughter hadn't reacted when the green-clothed old woman that stood at the side of the arena raised her head indifferently and glanced at the young man. The young man opened his mouth, yet he hadn't finished speaking. Bang! An enormous bang sounded out, and an aged figure appeared at the place the young man stood earlier. In the blink of an eye, everyone present noticed that the green-clothed old woman that stood at the other end of the arena had suddenly stood at the position the young man stood at earlier. As for the young man, he was directly blasted off the arena. My young Miss Groom search competition is only limited to young geniuses below the age of 25. Those over the age of 25 shouldn't come up and make a fool of themselves. This old woman will be able to see if you're over the age limit with a single glance, so don't have any thoughts of getting lucky. The green-clothed old woman spoke slowly, and her tone contained extreme confidence mixed within. However, no one present dared doubt the green-clothed old woman's words. So swift. Duan Lingtian stood outside the ring, his eyes narrowing. The green-clothed old woman's speed was frighteningly fast. Although he was curious about the strength of the old woman, Duan Lingtian didn't dare to use his spiritual energy to probe further. Could it be that the powerful spiritual energy just now originated from this old woman? Duan Lingtian couldn't help but think in his heart. He had long noticed this old woman standing at the side of the arena, but at first, he thought she was just an ordinary servant of the Castellan manor. He never expected this old woman to be so secretive. Let me do it. A graceful figure landed on the arena. It was a young man around the age of 23 or 24. Whoosh! The young man looked at the city lord's daughter who was standing in the distance. With a kick of his legs, he seemed to have turned into a gust of wind, striking first to gain the initiative. Whoosh! In the sky, 600 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form and dashed out with a vast momentum. Whoosh! A 3-foot-long blade appeared in the young man's hand. His origin energy raged as he swept it out. Instantly, another 168 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared on the side of the 600 ancient mammoth silhouettes, 4th level of the nascent soul stage. Grade 7 spirit weapon. This sword strike contained the strength of 768 ancient mammoths. The young man's sword strike was about to touch the city lord's daughter. The hearts of everyone present couldn't help but rise to their throats. Whoosh! In practically an instant, it was as if a gust of cool wind blew past. The city lord's daughter finally made a move. She casually flicked her sleeve, causing it to instantly swell up as origin energy roared and swept towards the young man. Bang! Without the slightest suspense, the young man was directly blasted out of the arena along with his sword. At the same time, 800 ancient mammoth silhouettes were faintly visible in the sky above the city lord's daughter. At this moment, the city lord's daughter didn't utilize her spirit weapon. 6th level of the nascent soul stage. Oh my god. The city lord's daughter really concealed her cultivation. She's actually a 6th level nascent soul stage martial artist. A 20-year-old 6th level nascent soul stage martial artist? A person with such natural talent seems to have never appeared in the history of the Darkstone Empire, right? Even in the entire Dark Han dynasty, there are rarely such monstrous geniuses in the martial Dao. The surrounding crowd of spectators were clamorous. All of them were shocked by the cultivation displayed by the city lord's daughter, 6th level nascent soul stage martial artist at the age of 20? Slight shock appeared on Duan Lingtian's face. Is this city lord's daughter really only 20 years old? Big brother Ling Tian. Her natural talent seems to be even stronger than yours. The little gold mouse sent a voice transmission into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian's brows raised and his eyes contained slight astonishment mixed with 20-year-old 6th level nascent soul stage martial artist. In terms of cultivation alone, she was indeed stronger than him. As for natural talent, Duan Lingtian neither agreed nor disagreed. His natural talent could be considered to be the extreme natural talent of a martial artist in Cloud Continent. No matter how high the natural talent of this city lord's daughter was, it would at most be equal to him. Whereas his natural talent was only unearthed by the 10,000-year stalactite milk 3 years ago, and compared to the city lord's daughter, he started much later. After the city lord's daughter revealed a cultivation at the 6th level of the nascent soul stage, no one went up the arena to look for a beating. Time silently flowed by. The curtains to the groom search competition will officially end in half an hour. The azure-clothed old woman spoke indifferently. Looks like no one is able to defeat the city lord's daughter and obtain the beauty. There's also that soul transformation fruit. Supposedly, even if one isn't an inscription master, one can still consume it. Once consumed, one's soul will obtain a sublimation, and it's even able to affect one's comprehension ability to a certain extent. The crowd discussed animatedly. Big brother Ling Tian, why aren't you going up? The little gold mouse's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian's brows raised. Then he exerted strength with his legs and leaped up to descend onto the groom search competition's combat arena. For a time, the combination of a man and a mouse drew the attention of everyone. Another person is going up to look for a beating. It's a young man that looks to be at most 22 years old. Isn't this young man the one we saw in the restaurant earlier? He seems to be. The little gold mouse on his shoulder isn't simple. It's a formidable demon beast. The Chong clan's young master, Chong Hui, had one of his arms crippled by a swing of its tail. That harmless little gold mouse is actually a void-prying stage demon beast? In next to no time, along with the people that had seen Duan Lingtian in the restaurant earlier revealing the truth, everyone knew that the little gold mouse that stood on Duan Lingtian's shoulder was a demon beast. Demon beast? The azure-clothed old woman heard the discussions in the crowd, then looked at Duan Lingtian and said indifferently, "The rules of our city lord's estate's groom search competition is that one must not rely on any external sources of strength besides spirit weapons. Squeak, squeak. The little gold mouse bared its fangs and brandished its claws at the old woman when it heard her. Then it turned around and wriggled its butt towards the old woman. This caused the old woman to be astounded. The crowd of people in the surroundings of the combat arena were dumbstruck as well. Is this really a demon beast? It simply destroyed the lofty image of a demon beast in my heart. No matter how I look at it, this little gold mouse doesn't seem like a demon beast. Seems like a pet instead. Meanwhile, the city lord's daughter that hadn't made a move since the beginning looked at the little gold mouse by Duan Lingtian's side with her beautiful eyes that were like autumn water, and her beautiful brows twitched slightly. What a cute little gold mouse. The city lord's daughter spoke with a gentle and pleasant voice that caused others to feel as if they were bathed in the spring breeze. Don't worry, it won't attack. Duan Lingtian nodded to the azure-clothed old woman, then looked at the city lord's daughter and lightly smiled. I wonder how I should address you, young miss? Want to know? Defeat me first. The city lord's daughter looked at Duan Lingtian as she spoke slowly, and her voice was ethereal as if it reverberated out from within the gorge. Duan Lingtian was stunned, then nodded and said, Young miss, I wonder if I cannot marry you if I defeat you? I only want the soul transformation fruit. Is that all right? When Duan Lingtian spoke these words, he was slightly in a difficult position. After all, these words were slightly hurtful. But he had to speak. The reason he ascended the combat arena wasn't for the city lord's daughter, but for the soul transformation fruit. The soul transformation fruit was too important and too difficult to come by to him. He wasn't willing to miss it. As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, the scene went deathly silent. After a short moment, the surrounding crowd of spectators in the surroundings of the combat arena were in an uproar. F***K. I didn't hear wrongly, right? This kid actually said he only wants the soul transformation fruit, and doesn't want the city lord's daughter? Is he stupid? Even though the soul transformation fruit is difficult to come by, how could it compare to the city lord's daughter? Marrying the city lord's daughter would mean soaring into the sky. Madman, madman. The crowd was in an uproar, and they were all shocked by Duan Lingtian's words. Of course, there were also some people that felt Duan Lingtian was too arrogant and conceited. This kid looks to be around 22 years old. He actually dares to speak so arrogantly. Does he really think he can defeat the city lord's daughter? Exactly. If he can't defeat the city lord's daughter, then it's utterly useless for him to say all this now. He's too arrogant. High above in the sky, the red-robed middle-aged man couldn't help but be stunned, and he had a strange expression. Elder Kong, I slightly believe it now. Perhaps he's really the man in Tianwu's destiny. He's only come for the sake of the soul transformation fruit. The temptation of the soul transformation fruit is too great to an inscription master. Elder Kong nodded. His spiritual force is only a little bit away from stepping into the void prying stage. It's the first time I've seen such a young fellow possessing such a formidable spiritual force. Elder Kong seems to be extremely interested in him. The red-robed middle-aged man smiled. Elder Kong didn't reply, but his eyes that flickered with bright lights were sufficient to expose his thoughts. On the combat arena of the groom search competition. Kid, you boast shamelessly. The azure-clothed old woman's face sank, and her fierce gaze swept towards Duan Lingtian. If you're here to cause trouble, then go down now. Duan Lingtian was slightly embarrassed. People aren't even allowed to speak the truth these days? If you want the soul transformation fruit, then we'll have to see if you have the ability. Chapter 426. If you want the soul transformation fruit, then we'll have to see if you have the ability. The city governor's daughter's light shout seemed to contain slight rage mixed within. Even a clay figurine has a temper. As the pampered and spoiled daughter of the city governor, how could she not be furious when she was looked down upon by a man like this? Whoosh! Under her extreme rage, the graceful figure of the city governor's daughter flashed out, seeming to have transformed into a spirit of fire, like a flaming phoenix as she flashed directly towards Duan Lingtian. Whoosh! The city governor's daughter attacked with rage. Her delicate hand formed into a palm that whistled out, and vast origin energy raged and skyrocketed as it enveloped towards Duanlingtian. This palm strike contained the strength of 800 ancient mammoths. This kid is going to be struck with misfortune. Right when most of the surrounding crowd of spectators had similar thoughts in their hearts, Duanlingtian moved. Duanlingtian stood on the spot without moving like a mountain, and he pushed out his palm that carried the might to split mountains and split rocks as he directly moved to intercept the attack. Instantly, 711 ancient mammoth silhouettes dashed out in the sky above Duanlingtian, with an imposing manner that shot into the sky like a rainbow. Fifth level of the nascent soul stage? A trace of surprise appeared within the clear eyes of the city governor's daughter that were like water. Obviously, she never imagined that Duanlingtian was able to possess such a cultivation at such an age. But as far as she was concerned, Duanlingtian was simply asking for trouble by actually wanting to use the strength of 711 ancient mammoths to go against her palm strike. Watch out! When he saw the trace of disdain in the eyes of the city governor's daughter, Duanlingtian naturally guessed her thoughts, and when he pushed out his palm and was about to intercept her palm strike, he warned. Shameless boasting! The city governor's daughter shouted out in a delicate voice, and her graceful figure flashed out like a ball of flames that swept out to envelop Duanlingtian, seeming as if she wanted to swallow Duanlingtian. Duanlingtian's eyes narrowed when he saw the city governor's daughter approaching menacingly. Quake energy! Instantly, the origin energy on the palm strike Duanlingtian struck out with a bang started to tremble, and the frequency grew faster and faster. In next to no time, the quake energy had arrived at its limit. Finally, the Duanlingtian and the city lord's daughter exchanged a blow. Boom! An enormous bang sounded out as the terrifying origin energy collided, causing the surrounding air to stagnate, and the airflow flashed to transform into circle after circle of ripples that swept out. Not only that, the arena was now filled with dust, almost shrouding the bodies of the Duanlingtian and the city lord's daughter. Even so, the group of onlookers still couldn't take their eyes off the scene before them. In their opinion, although the strength of the young man that entered the arena was not bad and possessed a cultivation at the 5th level of the nascent soul stage, however, the city governor's daughter was a 6th level nascent soul stage martial artist. He was an entire level higher than him. In their opinion, there was no doubt that the city lord's daughter had the upper hand in this exchange of blows. Unfortunately, sometimes imagination and reality were worlds apart. What happened next left them completely dumbfounded. Let go! They only heard a loud shout coming from the arena. The delicate body of the city lord's daughter trembled, and she actually retreated rapidly. How is this possible? The surrounding crowd of onlookers looked at the scene before them in disbelief. Although the strength of the young man was strange, possessing the strength of 11 ancient mammoths more than an ordinary 5th level nascent soul stage martial artist, but even then, the strength contained within his palm strike was still inferior to the city lord's daughter's strength of 89 ancient mammoths, right? How could he possibly have the upper hand? Is this an act? Many people couldn't help but think in their hearts. Presently, besides Duanlingtian himself, probably only the city lord's daughter was clear about what had happened earlier. You used inscriptions? The city lord's daughter looked at Duanlingtian in disbelief, and she hesitated for a moment before speaking out. Inscriptions. When the words of the city lord's daughter entered into the ears of the surrounding crowd, it caused the crowd to go into an uproar. F***K. This kid actually used inscriptions? No wonder he was able to defeat someone stronger than him and force the city lord's daughter to retreat in a head-on battle. So it turns out that he used inscriptions. Get off the arena. A shameless villain like you doesn't have the qualifications to continue staying on the arena. Get off the arena. For a time, Duanlingtian became the target of everyone and aroused the rage of everyone. Humph. Right at this moment, a cold snort that was like a thunderclap spread out on the arena and entered into the ears of everyone. For a time, the surroundings of the arena were deathly silent. Subsequently, she doesn't have knowledge. Could it be that all of you don't have knowledge as well? Duanlingtian indifferently swept the crowd of people around the arena with a face of disdain. Which eye of yours saw me use inscriptions? Besides that, if I used inscriptions, I would naturally leave behind traces of the inscriptions. Earlier, did any of you see or even sense the traces of the inscriptions? The surrounding crowd of spectators instantly went silent. He didn't use inscriptions. Right at this moment, the azure-clothed old woman at the side of the arena glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian before slowly speaking. Instantly, the surrounding crowd of spectators went silent. "Thank you, Senior. Senior has good eyesight unlike some people." Duan Lingtian nodded to the azure-clothed old woman, then glanced at the city lord's daughter who wore a fiery red light gauze dress, and he seemed to be implying something. "You!" The city lord's daughter was angered to the point she stomped her feet. Then with a raise of her hand, a crimson-red whip appeared in her hand. Flowing lights flashed around the whip, and it seemed as if strands of scorching flames were burning on it, along with the city lord's daughter flashing towards Duan Lingtian once more. Origin energy flashed on the whip in her hand. In the sky above her, another 380 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared beside the 800 ancient mammoth silhouette swoosh. The whip tore through the sky and seemed to have transformed into a venomous snake that fiercely bit towards Duan Lingtian. Grade 5 spirit weapon? Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted. Whirlwind. Duan Lingtian didn't dare hesitate as he exploded out with all his strength, and quake energy appeared, seeming to have transformed into a gale that barely dodged the whip that seemed to have transformed into a venomous snake that bit at him. This whip contained the strength of 1,180 ancient mammoths, a grade 5 spirit whip that provides an amplification of almost 38%. What exactly is the background of this Phoenix Nest City's city lord? At the same time that Duan Lingtian dodged, he was greatly shocked in his heart. After all, even in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, grade 5 spirit weapons could be counted with one's fingers. Even the sect he was in, the 7-Star Sword Sect, which was called the number 1 sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, only possessed a grade 5 spirit sword that was passed down from generation to generation. Now, the daughter of the Phoenix Nest City's city lord had casually withdrawn a grade 5 spirit weapon. This caused Duan Lingtian to feel a wave of speechlessness. Rain of flowers. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian heard a light shout, and it was the city lord's daughter that had pursued him. The whip silhouettes that covered the sky flashed through the sky and seemed to have transformed into countless flower silhouettes that enveloped down towards Duan Lingtian. As if it was raining. What a brilliant martial skill! Duan Lingtian's eyes squinted. He was able to sense that the whip silhouettes in the hand of the city lord's daughter had practically locked onto his location, causing him to have nowhere to hide. The whip silhouettes that covered the sky seemed to have transformed into a heaven-encompassing net that enveloped him from top to bottom. In the past, Duan Lingtian had encountered a martial skill that was similar to this. However, those martial skills had flaws that could be exploited after all. Unless Duan Lingtian was able to dig a hole and enter the martial skill executed by the city lord's daughter, otherwise, it would be difficult for him to charge out of the area enveloped by the rain of flowers that was formed from the whip silhouettes that covered the sky. The surroundings of the combat ring were deathly silent. Everyone stared fixedly at the scene before them, as they were deeply afraid that they would miss out on a single detail. Whoosh! Since he was unable to dodge, Duan Lingtian didn't dodge any longer, and the violet myrtle flexible sword appeared in his hand. Subsequently, origin energy surged out from the violet myrtle flexible sword in Duan Lingtian's hand. In the sky, beside the 711 ancient mammoth silhouettes were another 299 ancient mammoth silhouettes. Violet myrtle flexible sword, a grade 6 spirit sword. It was personally refined by Duan Lingtian, and when it was refined, it was able to provide an amplification of strength by 42%. At this moment, the violet myrtle flexible sword in Duan Lingtian's hand had the strength of 1,010 ancient mammoths condensed within it. However, even then, Duan Lingtian's strength was still greatly inferior when compared to the city lord's daughter. Even if it was the quake energy, it was still difficult to surmount such a large gap. Not bad spirit sword, but unfortunately you're bound to lose today. The voice of the city lord's daughter contained a trace of coldness as the spirit whip in her hand flashed out, and the whip silhouettes that covered the sky enveloped towards Duan Lingtian like a shadow that followed the body like droplets of rain that struck onto Duan Lingtian. You're so confident? A wisp of a brilliant smile appeared on Duan Lingtian's face. Instantly, as origin energy raged on the violet myrtle flexible sword in Duan Lingtian's hand, a strand of strange aura suddenly appeared. As the strange aura appeared abruptly, the energy of heaven and earth above Duan Lingtian roiled once again. The surrounding crowd of spectators were all dumbstruck. Wind force. The pupils of the azure-clothed old woman that stood at the side of the ring couldn't help but constrict. Wind force. Even the red-clothed middle-aged man and the gray-clothed old man in the sky were slightly moved now. They were able to discern. That was a true wind force, it wasn't a wind force seed. This little fellow really scares people to death. The gray-clothed old man couldn't help but sigh with emotion. In the sky, the energy of heaven and earth roiled and once again added another 200 ancient mammoth silhouettes to Duan Lingtian instantly. The strength on Duan Lingtian's sword rose to the limit. The strength of 1,210 ancient mammoths. It completely surpassed the strength of the city governor's daughter's strength of 1,180 ancient mammoths. Under the gazes of everyone present, Duan Lingtian, who was within the whip silhouettes that covered the sky, finally moved. Sword drawing arts. His sword was like a bolt of lightning as it pointed towards the side of the whip silhouettes that covered the sky. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force had already seen through the martial skill, flower shower, executed by the city governor's daughter, and he instantly found the true location of the whip silhouettes and pointed his sword over. Dragon's finishing touch. This sword strike was instantly fused by Duan Lingtian with the high-grade profound rank martial skill. Dragon's finishing touch, at the perfection stage. Clang. A light clang sounded out as origin energy collided with each other. At this moment, Duan Lingtian seemed to have already seen the scene of the city governor's daughter being repelled by him once again. However, instantly, Duan Lingtian noticed that a strand of energy suddenly gushed out from the point of the violet myrtle flexible sword in his hand. He clearly saw it. Chapter 427. In the blink of an eye, the 120 ancient mammoth silhouettes that suddenly appeared became 80+ ancient mammoth silhouettes. And then it slowly increased 90+ ancient mammoth silhouettes. 100+ ancient mammoth silhouettes. The ceaseless fluctuation was 127 ancient mammoth silhouettes at its peak. Force seed. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted, but when his gaze touched the spirit whip in the hands of the city governor's daughter, he instead noticed that within the origin energy that flowed around the spirit whip, there seemed to be a strand of a strange scorching aura. This aura was extremely familiar to Duan Lingtian. It was the aura of flames. Fire force. It's a fire force seed. Duan Lingtian recognized the ability the city governor's daughter executed now. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian's face sank. He felt an enormous force come from the spirit whip of the city governor's daughter, and it gushed into the spirit sword in his hand, gaining the initiative by striking first. Quake energy. Even if Duan Lingtian utilized the quake energy in time, he was only able to offset a portion of the force. Whirlwind. Following this force, Duan Lingtian borrowed the force to flash out, and he seemed to have transformed into a gale as he stood in the distance and looked at the city governor's daughter from afar. If I knew earlier that she'd comprehended a fire force seed, I would have utilized the quake energy at the beginning. Duan Lingtian sighed in his heart and felt it was slightly regretful. Duan Lingtian originally thought that even if he didn't utilize the quake energy, his entire strength would be sufficient to crush the city governor's daughter. But the facts proved that he'd underestimated the city governor's daughter. The city governor's daughter was a genius in the martial Tao that had comprehended a fire force seed. In terms of natural talent, she wasn't inferior to him. In terms of comprehension ability, she was the best amongst the younger generation that he'd ever seen. Even the demonic Lotus Blade Sex Saber young master of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom was far inferior to her. If Duan Lingtian had utilized the limit of the quake energy when he attacked, he would have already suppressed the city governor's daughter and obtained the final victory. But unfortunately he didn't. Even if he utilized the quake energy in time later on and dissolved a portion of the city governor's daughter's strength, he was still unable to counter-suppress her. Raising the quake energy to the limit required a process. Just now, there was no time for Duan Lingtian to gradually develop the extreme tremor force. On the arena, Duan Lingtian and the mayor's daughter stood facing each other. The violet myrtle flexible sword in Duan Lingtian's hand was still wreaking havoc and throbbing with his essence energy. In the sky above him, 1,210 lifelike ancient mammoth silhouettes were accumulating force and waiting to be unleashed. The city lord's daughter was the same. Her spirit whip was wrapped with elemental energy. As for the ancient mammoth silhouettes above her head, they fluctuated between 1,260 and 1,307, and were extremely unstable. Moreover, there was no sign of it being annihilated. The fire force seed of the city governor's daughter has practically arrived at the peak of what a nascent soul stage martial artist is able to comprehend. She's already able to completely control the fire force seed to a certain extent, and it won't occasionally show signs of being annihilated like Saber Young Master's Saber Force. Duan Lingtian's heart skipped a beat. He admired this daughter of the city lord from the bottom of his heart. For a 20-year-old girl to possess such skills, it was simply monstrous. Monstrous to the point it caused one to be shocked. When Duan Lingtian stared fixedly at the city lord's daughter, the city lord's daughter was also looking at Duan Lingtian. Could it be him? The beautiful eyes of the city lord's daughter revealed a trace of bewilderment. Besides that, there was also a trace of shyness that was similar to a young girl in love. Of course, Duan Lingtian didn't notice this. When Duan Lingtian and the city lord's daughter stood in confrontation, the surroundings of the arena were once again in an uproar. I truly never imagined that this young man is a freak as well. Yeah, I feel that his strength isn't much inferior to the city lord's daughter. But his strength seems to be inferior to the city lord's daughter. So what if it's inferior? Could it be that you've forgotten that his strength was inferior to the city lord's daughter earlier? Yet didn't he still force her back? For a time, numerous burning gazes descended onto Duan Lingtian. Elder Kong, this little fellow's strength seems to be slightly strange. Besides that, his origin energy seems to be able to produce some sort of vibration at an extremely fast frequency, and the feeling it gives me is as if the red-clothed middle-aged man's firm face was filled with astonishment. The demon beast, Wyrm Python. The gray-clothed old man finished the sentence and spoke with a serious expression. Exactly, it's a Wyrm Python. He's actually grasped the Wyrm Python's ability to utilize origin energy that allows the weak to defeat the strong. It's truly shocking. The red-clothed middle-aged man sighed with emotion, and his tone contained slight disbelief mixed within. Perhaps, if he knew that the third form of the Nine Dragons War sovereign technique that Duan Lingtian cultivated was the Wyrm Python form, then he wouldn't think like this. Young miss isn't a match for him. The gray-clothed old man shook his head, and a strand of bright light flashed within his muddy eyes. Even though they were separated by a high altitude, he seemed to be able to clearly see the violet-colored figure on the arena. You're not a match for me. On the arena, Duan Lingtian looked at the city lord's daughter. We'll only know if I'm a match for you after we try. The city lord's daughter shouted out in a delicate voice, and her graceful figure flashed out once again, seeming to have transformed into an enraged flaming phoenix that swore to burn Duan Lingtian into ashes. Duan Lingtian was able to discern the rage within the words of the city lord's daughter. He could imagine that the beautiful face beneath the veil was surely filled with rage. Rain of petals. The city lord's daughter swung the grade 5 spirit whip in her hand, and whip images that covered the sky appeared once again, enveloping Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian's face went grim, and he stood on the spot without moving like a mountain. The origin energy on the violet myrtle flexible sword in his hand lightly trembled, and its frequency rose to the limit. Quake energy at the limit. Swish, 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 swish. The whip images that covered the sky sprinkled down as if transforming into drops of swift raindrops, forming an inescapable net that wanted to restrain Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian moved. Sword drawing arts. His sword flashed out like a bolt of lightning, directly flashing towards the grade 5 spirit whip that was pierced through and locked onto by his spiritual force. Finishing touch. The violet myrtle flexible sword drew a sword flower, swiftly pointing out, and a piercing howl sounded out as it descended onto the grade 5 spirit whip, breaking the martial skill of the city lord's daughter once again. Let go. Duan Lingtian's hand trembled as he shouted explosively. wanting to make the city lord's daughter throw away the grade 5 spirit whip in time. But he quickly noticed that the city lord's daughter actually didn't have any intention of letting go. In the end, Duan Lingtian spun the violet myrtle flexible sword in his hand, and after dispersing the origin energy on the whip in the hands of the city lord's daughter, his other hand flashed out and locked onto the hand of the city lord's daughter, seizing the grade 5 spirit whip and throwing it to the side. This woman is too eager to be strong, Duan Lingtian sighed in his heart. He quickly reacted and only felt something soft enter his hand, and only then did he notice that he was still holding onto the slender hand of the city lord's daughter. Duan Lingtian noticed that at this moment, the city lord's daughter didn't have the rage from before, and she glanced at him before lowering her head with the appearance of a little woman. Compared to before, she was like a completely different person. Shit! This scene caused Duan Lingtian to have a bad premonition in his heart, and he hurriedly let go and took a few steps back. Thank you for letting me win. Big brother Lingtian, do you want to see what she looks like? The little gold mouse's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. If you want to see, I'll go remove her veil right now. Don't act recklessly. Duan Lingtian glared at the little gold mouse as he restrained her. If the little gold mouse removed the veil of the city lord's daughter, then the city lord's daughter said, "The first man that sees my face must be my husband, then wouldn't he have died of injustice? This little brother has won. Little brother, congratulations on becoming the son-in-law of the Lord City Lord. Congratulations, little brother." In next to no time, Duan Lingtian noticed that the surging crowd in the surroundings of the combat ring was actually congratulating him. This caused him to be speechless. Didn't he say that he'd only come for the soul transformation fruit? Is there something wrong with the ears of these people? Right when Duan Lingtian was about to explain himself. Ha 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 ha. A hearty laugh sounded out from the horizon, and it became clearer and clearer. Duan Lingtian raised his head to look over. He saw a crimson-red figure descend from the sky, and it quickly appeared before his eyes. This was a middle-aged man in a crimson-red robe. The space between his brows emitted a dignified aura, and his eyes that looked at Duan Lingtian emitted a bright light. Lord City Lord. Waves of respectful voices sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. It was the group of people in the surroundings of the combat ring that were bowing to the red-robed middle-aged man. City Lord? Phoenix Nest City's City Lord? Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding. Good. Very good. Kid, from today onwards you're my Feng Wu Dao's son-in-law. The Phoenix Nest City's City Lord, Feng Wu Dao, looked at Duan Lingtian and nodded with satisfaction. He had the feeling that the more a father-in-law looks at his son-in-law, the more interesting it is. Congratulations, City Lord. Congratulations, City Lord. The group of people in the surroundings of the combat ring congratulated Feng Wu Dao. Thank you, everyone. Feng Wu Dao laughed heartily, and his mood was extremely good. City Lord Feng. Duan Lingtian glanced at the young woman that had her head lowered and stood by Feng Wu Dao's side with a slightly bashful expression, and he laughed bitterly. I think you've misunderstood. I didn't ascend this combat ring today for the sake of your daughter. I only want that soul transformation fruit. As soon as Duan Lingtian said this, the atmosphere that was brimming with joy came to an abrupt stop. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Numerous gazes came from the surroundings of the combat ring and descended onto Duan Lingtian. The group of people were shocked by Duan Lingtian's words. Only now did some people recall that this young man had indeed said these words when he ascended the combat ring earlier. But at that time, no one took his words to heart. What did you say? Feng Wu Dao's face went grim, and in practically an instant, a formidable aura swept out from his body to press down onto Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian's face went grim. Feng Wu Dao's aura descended onto his body, pressing down on him to the point his internal organs trembled. In the end, Duan Lingtian was truly unable to endure it, and his body trembled. Pooh! He forcefully spat out a mouthful of blood. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian struggled to raise his head, and he looked at Feng Wu Dao in astonishment with a face full of fear. The strength of this Feng Wu Dao is so strong. I'm not afraid in the slightest, even if it's the aura of an ordinary void initiation stage expert. His aura is actually able to injure me. Chapter 428. Kid, do you think the groom search competition held by my city governor's estate is a game? Or do you think no one wants my daughter? You think you can marry her just because you want to and you don't because you don't want to? Feng Wudao glanced coldly at Duan Lingtian as he shouted out with a deep voice. Now when he saw Duan Lingtian actually only spat out a mouthful of blood under the envelopment of his imposing aura, a trace of imperceptible surprise flashed past Feng Wudao's eyes. Originally, as far as he was concerned, his imposing aura was sufficient to crush Duan Lingtian, a mere 5th-level nascent soul stage martial artist, to the point he went limp on the ground. Where do you place the dignity of my city governor's estate by doing this? Where do you place my daughter's face? Feng Wudao's voice abruptly became stern. Whoosh! An even stronger imposing aura flashed out to sweep towards Duan Lingtian. Instantly, Duan Lingtian's already pale face went pale, and he felt as if his entire body was at the center of a storm, and he was on the verge of collapse. Duan Lingtian glanced at the young woman with a pair of slightly red autumn eyes that stood by Feng Wudao's side, and at the same time that he spat out another mouthful of blood, he laughed bitterly. City Governor Feng, when I ascended the combat ring, I told your daughter that I'm only here for the soul transformation fruit. You really don't fancy me? The city governor's daughter's autumn eyes were filled with tears as she stared at Duan Lingtian, and her gentle and pleasant voice contained slight excitement mixed within. Duan Lingtian sighed. I haven't even seen your appearance, so how could I possibly take a liking to you? But I've indeed only come here for the soul transformation fruit, and I have no other intentions. If I can't only take the soul transformation fruit, then I'll be disturbing you. Farewell. I'm sorry. Duan Lingtian looked at the city governor's daughter and smiled apologetically, then he turned around with the intention of leaving. Do you think my city governor's estate is a place you can come and go as you please? At the instant Duan Lingtian turned around, he felt a voice that seemed to have condensed into a sharp arrow that fiercely pierced into his ears and shook his eardrums to the point they trembled. A power that he could not resist instantly spread throughout his body. In the next moment he felt powerless and his consciousness gradually blurred. The group of people outside the arena gradually disappeared before his eyes. Creak, creak, before he fainted, he only heard the little gold mouse's furious cries by his ears, and then he completely lost consciousness. When Duan Lingtian regained consciousness, he felt a soreness all over his body. It hurts. Duan Lingtian opened his eyes, and only now did he notice that he was lying on a luxurious bed and was in a spacious room. You're awake. At this moment the door opened and a fiery red figure walked in. She was holding a plate, and on the plate was a bowl of fragrant meat porridge. Duan Lingtian's stomach grumbled when he smelled the porridge. Why am I here? Duan Lingtian shook his slightly dizzy head and asked as he looked at the veiled red-clothed young woman before him, the daughter of the city governor. You were knocked unconscious by my father, and have been unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights. My father's temper is like that, don't take it to heart. The daughter of the city governor placed the porridge at the side and helped Duan Lingtian to lie down. After that, she removed her veil and held up the bowl of porridge, scooped up a spoonful and blew on it before passing it to Duan Lingtian and lightly smiled. It's been 3 days, you're surely hungry. But the current Duan Lingtian was instead dumbstruck. At the instant the daughter of the city governor removed her veil, he was completely dumbstruck. After the veil fell, a peerlessly beautiful face that could captivate even birds and beasts appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes. Her black brows were like a painting, her eyes were like 2 drops of autumn water, her fine nose, red lips, white teeth, and natural and tranquil facial features outlined a perfect outline, and she was beautiful to the point it was suffocating. She was like a fairy that had fallen to the mortal world. At this moment, Duan Lingtian only felt that his heart had completely calmed down because of the woman's appearance. You are so beautiful, Duan Lingtian muttered. The beauty of the woman was breathtaking. You should eat the porridge. The woman's beautiful face was crimson red, as if it could drip blood. She was as gentle as water, and was completely different from the valiant woman who had fought with Duan Lingtian on the arena earlier. She was like fire at every turn, and like water at every turn. This was Duan Lingtian's impression of the woman in his heart. Duan Lingtian allowed the woman to pour a mouthful of porridge for him. When the porridge entered his stomach, he only felt a burst of warmth rising. I still don't know your name?" the woman asked somewhat timidly. "I'm Duan Lingtian." Duan Lingtian lightly smiled and looked at the woman. "What about you?" "Feng Tianwu." The woman lightly smiled sweetly. "I'm truly sorry about the matter from before. I really wasn't prepared." Duan Lingtian had an apologetic expression when he recalled the matter from that day. Feng Tianwu seemed to have recalled the matter from that day when she heard this, and she faintly sighed. "Don't blame my father did it for me. Perhaps it's really because your conditions are too similar to the person in my destiny. So my father isn't willing to let you leave just like this. The person in your destiny." When he heard Feng Tianwu, Duan Lingtian seemed to be unable to make sense of it. "What destiny?" Feng Tianwu continued feeding Duan Lingtian the porridge as she slowly explained. "Actually, my father, Grandpa Kong, and Grandma Su only came to this city a few years ago. At that time, this city wasn't called Phoenix Nest City yet." Duan Lingtian was surprised, as he never imagined that the city governor, Feng Wudao, was actually not a member of this city in the past. After Feng Wudao arrived, he'd become the city governor in a short few years, and he'd even obtained the respect of the residents of Phoenix Nest City. Such ability was shocking. "Then where did all of you come from?" Duan Lingtian asked curiously. "Dark Han Dynasty." Feng Tianwu slowly spoke. "Dark Han Dynasty." Duan Lingtian was shocked. When he recalled Feng Tianwu's natural talent in the martial Dao and Feng Wudao's unfathomable strength, he came to an understanding. Perhaps only a person from the Dark Han Dynasty would be able to possess such terrifying natural talent and strength. "The destiny you spoke of earlier is..." Duan Lingtian asked curiously when he recalled what Feng Tianwu had said earlier. Feng Tianwu sighed faintly and said slowly, "That was the fate that my great-grandmother had divined for me. She was a powerful clairvoyant, and she was also the person I respected the most in my life. But for the sake of divining a path of survival for an inauspicious person like me, she instead exhausted the last 20 years of her lifespan." As she finished speaking, Feng Tianwu's beautiful face was covered in traces of tears. Diviner? Duan Lingtian was puzzled when he heard this. Could it be that this diviner was similar to those fortune tellers of my previous life? But in my previous life, Duan Lingtian had never believed in this. "Don't be sad. Since your great-grandmother chose to do this, it's sufficient to show that she loved you dearly. I presume that even if she knew in the netherworld, she wouldn't be willing to see you like this." Even though Duan Lingtian didn't believe in divination or destiny, but Feng Tianwu's current weeping appearance still caused him to be unable to bear it, and he hurriedly persuaded her. Under his persuasion, Feng Tianwu finally recovered. "Do you feel that the so-called destiny is very illusory?" Feng Tianwu looked at Duan Lingtian's eyes and suddenly asked. Feng Tianwu's pair of beautiful eyes were pure and flawless like two beautiful gems, and it caused Duan Lingtian's mind to shake. He didn't deny this question of Feng Tianwu's and nodded. Feng Tianwu slowly said, "At the beginning, I wasn't willing to believe it as well. Until the last time on the groom search competition, at the moment when I felt that my strength was inferior to yours, I finally believed that the destiny my great-grandmother divined for me wasn't illusory." "What do you mean?" Duan Lingtian looked at Feng Tianwu with interest. "Do you know why my father brought me to this city at the extreme south of the Darkstone Empire?" Feng Tianwu asked and answered her own question. "It's precisely because of the destiny my great-grandmother divined for me. According to what my great-grandmother said, when I was 20 years old, I would meet the man of my destiny in the southernmost city of the Darkstone Empire, Phoenix Nest City." When she spoke up to hear, Feng Tianwu's peerlessly beautiful face flushed red. "So after my father became the city governor of this city, he changed the name of this city to Phoenix Nest City. My great-grandmother said that the man of my destiny came from the south. During the year I was 20 years old, he would appear at a certain period of time. She asked my father to hold a groom search competition for me at that time. and use the soul transformation fruit she left behind as my dowry. Feng Tianwu continued. I just happened to be 20 years old this year. My father believed my great-grandmother's words very much, and he held a groom search competition for me during the period of time my great-grandmother spoke of, all for the sake of waiting for the man of my destiny to appear. The 10 days of the groom search competition was precisely the period of time my great-grandmother divined that the man would appear. According to my great-grandmother's words, that man wouldn't be more than 25 years old, and he would defeat me during the groom search competition. With my strength, not to mention in this remote city of the Darkstone Empire, even if it's in the entire Dark Han dynasty, a young genius below the age of 25 that's capable of defeating me is an existence that's rare like phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. During the first 9 days of the groom search competition, even though many people had come, yet not a single one of them was a match for me. A thought arose in my heart when I saw the arrival of the 10th day. Perhaps my great-grandmother was wrong. Until you appeared and defeated me, only then did I know that the destiny my great-grandmother spent 20 years of her lifespan to divine for me wasn't a blind guess. After she finished speaking, Feng Tianwu looked at Duan Lingtian and asked, You're from the south? Feng Tianwu's words caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to recover from his shock for a short period of time. To him, everything Feng Tianwu said was truly too profound. Destiny? He didn't believe in this. Yes, I'm from the south. But perhaps all of this is only a coincidence? Duan Lingtian said to Feng Tianwu. He was from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom was indeed at the south of the Inkstone Empire. Coincidence? Feng Tianwu shook her head and went silent for a short moment before saying, Don't worry, if you're unwilling, I won't force you. I didn't mean it like that. Chapter 429. Although he said it was a coincidence, he was still extremely shocked in his heart. One had to know that if all this was true, then the great-grandmother of the girl in front of him was really inhuman. She could even know when he would arrive at this Phoenix Nest city from divination. The most important thing was still that soul transformation fruit. Just now, Feng Tianwu's words had explained the origin of the soul transformation fruit. That was the dowry that the old lady had left for Feng Tianwu. In other words, if he wanted to get the soul transformation fruit, he had to marry Feng Tianwu. If it was in the past, when those two girls, Ke and Li Fei, were not by his side, perhaps he would have directly agreed to marry Feng Tianwu. After all, Feng Tianwu's conditions were not bad at all. She was as beautiful as a flower, and her background was astonishing. But now, with Ke and Li Fei, it was equivalent to having an additional responsibility. If possible, he did not want to hurt the two girls. Moreover, he only admired Feng Tianwu now, and did not have the feelings for her. He also did not have that kind of amazement and desire when he saw Li Fei back then. Perhaps it was because he already had Ke and Li Fei, that was why it was like this. All in all, this feeling was very complicated. I don't mean that. I just feel that it's a little sudden. Moreover, you and I have only just met, and there are no feelings between us. Could it be that you are willing to marry someone you don't know as your wife? Duan Lingtian asked Feng Tianwu. Hearing this, Feng Tianwu's red lips moved slightly, as if she wanted to say something but did not say it. Elder brother Duan, I'll go out first, you have to recuperate well. Feng Tianwu sighed faintly before leaving with the tray that had the empty bowl on it, and she left behind a beautiful back view for Duan Lingtian. She seems to have something she can't say? Duan Lingtian frowned. He saw Feng Tianwu's actions clearly just now. Whoosh! A gust of wind whistled, and with a bang the door was knocked open. A beam of golden light shone on the edge of the bed beside Duan Lingtian. Brother Lingtian, you're finally awake. The little gold mouse looked at Duan Lingtian as she danced with joy, and when she communicated with Duan Lingtian via voice transmission, she seemed to have slight excitement mixed within. Little gold, what happened after I fainted? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Oh, you were knocked unconscious by that Feng Wu Dao last time. As he listened to the little gold mouse's voice transmission, Duan Lingtian had a certain level of understanding towards everything that happened that day. In the end, Feng Wu Dao didn't make things difficult for him and little gold. He then brought them both into the city lord's mansion. He even gave him a great recovery pill. Big brother Ling Tian, I think big sister Tian Wu is pretty good. Are you going to marry her? The little gold mouse blinked her jade green eyes as she sized up Duan Ling Tian with interest. Duan Ling Tian glared at the little gold mouse. You little fellow, you're just a little kid, don't meddle in the affairs of adults. My injuries have more or less recovered. Accompany me for a walk. Right when Duan Ling Tian intended to change his clothes and leave the room with the little gold mouse. Knock! Knock! The sound of knocking sounded out. The door isn't closed. Along with Duan Ling Tian's reply, the half-closed door was opened, and an aged figure walked in slowly. With a single glance, Duan Ling Tian recognized the person. It was precisely the azure-clothed old woman that was on the combat ring during the spouse search competition that day. She was also the Grandma Su that Feng Tianwu spoke of. Thump! A scene that caused Duan Ling Tian to feel disbelief appeared. Grandma Su didn't say anything before walking before his bed, and directly kneeling on the ground. Senior, what are you doing? Duan Ling Tian's face went grim, and he hurriedly got off the bed with the intention of helping Grandma Su up. But unfortunately, Grandma Su's cultivation was much stronger than his, and no matter how he pulled, he was unable to help Grandma Su up from kneeling there. Senior. Duan Ling Tian laughed bitterly. No matter what it is, stand up and speak. When he saw Grandma Su still didn't react, Duan Ling Tian put on a stern expression. If you still don't stand up, then I'll leave directly. Grandma Su stood up when she heard this. Young Master Ling Tian. Grandma Su bowed respectfully to Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian wasn't surprised that Grandma Su knew his name, and presumably, Grandma Su had already met Feng Tianwu before coming here. Senior, if there's anything, then speak frankly. Young Master Ling Tian, the young miss ought to have told you about destiny, right? Grandma Su asked. Yes. Duan Ling Tian nodded. Then do you know that if you, the man of her destiny, don't unite with her, she won't be able to live past the age of 30. Grandma Su sighed. What? Duan Ling Tian's face went grim. Senior, what's actually going on? I knew it. The young miss is so kind and would surely not tell you this. Grandma Su continued. The young miss was born different from ordinary people. She possesses the extremely rare fire spirit body. Fire spirit body. Duan Ling Tian was first stunned when he heard Grandma Su. When he searched the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu, and found out what the innate fire spirit body represented, his face went ghastly pale. The fire spirit body was an extremely domineering innate spirit body, and it was extremely rare. In the history of Cloud Continent, it wasn't only the fire spirit body that appeared, but also the water spirit body, lightning spirit body, wind spirit body. Practically all of them had appeared. But the possessors of these innate spirit bodies were rarely able to live past the age of 30, because once they reached the age of 30, the strength of the innate spirit body would completely erupt, and the possessor of the innate spirit body would be unable to endure the pressure and directly explode to death. Samsara Emperor Wu had experienced 2 lifetimes, and he'd once encountered a possessor of the water spirit body. That possessor of the water spirit body possessed extraordinary natural talent before the age of 30, and when his cultivation stepped into the 7th level of the void prying stage, he relied on the water spirit body to comprehend 3rd-level water concept. When he utilized all his ability, his strength even completely crushed an ordinary 1st and 2nd level void initiation stage martial artist. However, at the age of 30, this possessor of the water spirit body was unable to endure the eruption of the water spirit energy within his body, and his body exploded to death. That person was a good friend of Samsara Emperor Wu's in his first lifetime. He was also the one and only possessor of a spirit body that Samsara Emperor Wu had encountered in his 2 lifetimes. It was precisely because of this good friend that Samsara Emperor Wu had once deeply understood innate spirit bodies like the water spirit body and fire spirit body through various ancient books. In the end, he obtained a conclusion. People that possessed miraculous innate spirit bodies were practically unable to live past the age of 30. Because the strength of an innate spirit body would erupt when the possessor of the innate spirit body was 30. Whereas there were only 2 methods to solve this problem. The first was to break through to the void transformation stage before the age of 30. According to the judgment of Samsara Emperor Wu, if one's cultivation broke through to the void transformation stage, then one would be able to forcefully endure the eruption of the innate spirit body at the age of 30. Otherwise, even if one was at the 9th level of the void interpretation stage, one would still die without a doubt. But unfortunately, it was extremely difficult to break through to the void transformation stage before the age of 30, and it was equivalent to a fantasy story. The second method was to find a possessor of a spirit body of opposite attributes and combine the two. In this way, the strength of the two spirit bodies would be able to obtain resistance and relief through the combination of yin and yang, and the situation of the eruption of the innate spirit body wouldn't occur when the possessor was 30. For example, Feng Tianwu. She possessed the fire spirit body, and if she was able to find a man with the water spirit body or the ice spirit body to become husband and wife, then once they were united, they would be able to nip the danger in the bud. I never imagined that she's actually a possessor of the fire spirit body. Duan Lingtian sighed and felt pity for Feng Tianwu. According to the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu, possessors of spirit bodies could be said to be existences that were favored by the heavens to a certain extent, because their natural talent and comprehension ability were usually extremely high. Especially in the aspect of force comprehension, they even possessed a unique advantage. For example, Feng Tianwu's cultivation was only at the 6th level of the nascent soul stage, yet she'd already comprehended the peak fire force seed. Once she broke through to the void prying stage, she would be able to directly comprehend elementary fire force. However, even though possessors of spirit bodies possess natural talent and comprehension ability that caused others to be envious and even jealous, yet they would have to face the danger of life and death at the age of 30. In the history of Cloud Continent, there were very few possessors of spirit bodies that were able to live past the age of 30. Senior, I don't possess the water spirit body, nor the ice spirit body. Even if I marry Tian Wu and unite with her, I'm afraid I'm unable to resolve her danger. Duan Lingtian looked at Grandma Su and sighed. I don't know anything about water spirit body or ice spirit body. I only know that this is the destiny that the Lord Priest divined for the young Mississippi, whereas you are the man in the young Miss destiny. So long as you unite with the young Miss, you'll naturally be able to resolve the danger on the young Mississippi. Grandma Su shook her head and had blind trust towards the Lord Priest that she spoke of. Duan Lingtian was speechless. Isn't this messing around? Firstly, he was unable to allow Feng Tianwu to possess a cultivation at the void transformation stage before the age of 30. Secondly, he didn't possess the water spirit body nor the ice spirit body. So he was unable to go against and alleviate the energy of the spirit body within Feng Tianwu's body. So as far as he was concerned, even if Feng Tianwu really married him, he would be unable to help Feng Tianwu. Chapter 430. City Governor's Estate, Audience Hall. Duan Lingtian walked into the audience hall and saw the city governor, Feng Wu Dao, who sat at the head seat at the center with a glance. Feng Tianwu had once again put on her veil and stood by Feng Wu Dao's side. Although her appearance was concealed by the veil, her beautiful figure was clearly visible, and it caused one's heart to palpitate. Besides Feng Wu Dao and his daughter, there were another 4 people in the audience hall. 2 middle-aged men with extraordinary bearings in luxurious clothes, a young man with a severed arm and a young woman. Squeak squeak, when Duan Lingtian recognized the one-armed young man and the woman, the little gold mouse that stood on his shoulder looked at the one-armed young man as well, and she bared her fangs and brandished her claws, and her jade-green eyes were filled with provocation. This young man with a severed arm was precisely the person that failed to forcefully buy Little Gold in the restaurant that day and made a move against him, and in the end had his arm crippled by Little Gold. He seemed to be called Chang Hui, city governor. Duan Lingtian looked at Feng Wu Dao and lightly nodded as he greeted. Feng Wu Dao nodded, then looked at the 2 middle-aged men and said slowly, "These 2 are the patriarchs of our Phoenix Nest cities, Chang clan and Qian clan. They've come to look for you this time." Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he looked at the patriarchs of the Chang clan and Qian clan. Their cultivations were extraordinary, and they were both existences at the void prying stage. Patriarchs have come to denounce me for my crimes? Duan Lingtian looked at the two of them and smiled lightly. We don't dare. The Chong clan's patriarch hurriedly shook his head, then raised his hand to withdraw a luminous pearl that was the size of an adult's fist and passed it to Duan Lingtian as he said humbly, Young master, my son was rude a few days ago, and I hope you can be magnanimous and not fuss about it with my son. Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto the luminous pearl in the Chong clan's patriarch's hand, and he was slightly surprised. If such a large luminous pearl were to be auctioned off, it would at least be able to be auctioned off for a few tens of millions of gold. To a certain extent, a luminous pearl like this could be considered to be a rare treasure. Master Chong is too polite. It's just a small matter. I've already forgotten about it. Although he said this, the speed of Duan Lingtian's hand wasn't slow in the slightest as he nimbly received the luminous pearl from the Chong clan's patriarch and weighed it in his hand. Then I'll thank Patriarch Chong for his generous gift. It's good that young master likes her. The head of the Chong family squeezed out a smile, but his heart was bleeding. This lunar pearl was something he'd obtained at the auction in the Darkstone Empire's imperial city all those years ago for 30 million gold now. He had given it away just like that. However, he also knew that he had to give it away. The person in front of him was the city lord's son-in-law. As the current generation patriarch of the Chong clan that had been passed down in this city for a few hundred years, he'd personally witnessed the rise of the city governor, Feng Wudao. Feng Wudao had just arrived in their city a few years ago. As soon as he arrived, he defeated the city lord of this city and entered the city lord's mansion, becoming the new master of this city. He even changed the name of this city to Phoenix Nest City. No one knew how strong this city governor's strength was. He only knew that after the former city governor that was defeated by Feng Wudao was expelled from Phoenix Nest City, he was unwilling in his heart and found a formidable void initiation stage martial artist to deal with Feng Wudao. The final outcome. The former city governor and the void initiation stage expert, he found were dead. From that moment onwards, no one in Phoenix Nest City dared question Feng Wudao's strength. Young master, this is our Qian clan's compensation. The Qian clan's patriarch withdrew a necklace formed from a string of 7 colored gems and passed it to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian was able to discern that the 7 different colored gems strung on this necklace were all pure natural gems of extraordinary value. In terms of value, the 7 gems combined wasn't inferior to the night luminescent pearl the Chong clan's patriarch gave. Thank you, Patriarch Qian. Duan Lingtian received it without the slightest trace of politeness and accepted the compensation and apology of the patriarchs of the Chong and Qian clans. Don't worry, patriarchs, I was only playing around with Brother Chong and young Miss Qian that day. It's only a small matter, I won't take it to heart. Duan Lingtian said to the 2 patriarchs of the Chong and Qian clans. This caused the corners of the latter's mouth to twitch. Chong Hui's expression was extremely unsightly. Playing around? Just for fun he crippled one of his arms? Of course he didn't dare say it out loud. He knew that since the young man before him was already the son-in-law of their Phoenix Nest city governor, even if the Chong and Qian clans exhausted all their strength, they would still be unable to do anything to the young man. The city governor alone was sufficient to sweep through their Chong and Qian clans. So he could only grit his teeth and swallow all this pain. The 4 members of the Chong and Qian clans heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Duan Lingtian didn't have the intention to pursue the matter. After bidding farewell to the city governor, Feng Wudao, the 4 of them left directly. Duan Lingtian. Suddenly, Feng Wudao shouted out in shock, causing Duan Lingtian's mind to greatly shake, and he turned around to look at Feng Wudao with a bitter smile on his face. He knew that what should come would always come. City governor. Duan Lingtian looked at Feng Wudao and was neither servile nor overbearing. You're really unwilling to marry my daughter? As Feng Wudao spoke, a terrifying aura swept out and enveloped Duan Lingtian. And right when Duan Lingtian's face went pale and was about to mobilize his origin energy to resist, whoosh! A burst of fragrance assaulted his nose, and a beautiful figure was a step ahead and blocked in front of him, blocking Feng Wudao's aura. Who? Her graceful and delicate figure trembled as she forcefully spat out a mouthful of blood, and her body was on the verge of collapse. Woo! Feng Wudao's face went pale, and he hurriedly withdrew his aura. As if transforming into a gust of wind, he instantly arrived before Feng Tianwu and fed her a medicinal pill. Feng Tianwu's face was ghastly pale and only recovered slightly after a long time. She'd only just recovered when she said to Feng Wudao, "Father, don't make things difficult for elder brother Duan." Tianwu. Duan Lingtian's heart trembled when he saw Feng Tianwu being injured because of him. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and looked at Feng Wudao. "City Governor, Grandma Su has already told me about everything related to Tianwu. I have a certain level of understanding of the fire spirit body, but I don't possess the water spirit body or the ice spirit body, and I'm afraid it's difficult for me to help Tianwu. Elder brother Duan, you know everything?" Feng Tianwu's beautiful face recovered some color with great difficulty, and she couldn't help but look over when she heard Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded and sighed. "Tianwu, you should have told me earlier. If I really had a way to help you, I wouldn't stand by idly." When Feng Tianwu heard Duan Lingtian, her beautiful face was unknowingly tainted with a wisp of crimson red. "Kid, what you mean is that you're willing to take Tianwu as your wife?" Feng Wudao looked at Duan Lingtian with a gaze that burned like torches. "City Governor, I feel that what you're thinking in your heart isn't to marry Tianwu off, but to help her get rid of the calamity of the fire spirit body. Right?" Duan Lingtian didn't answer Feng Wudao and replied with a question instead. "Exactly." Feng Wudao nodded, then said, "But, according to the divination of my grandmother, the one and only priest in the Dark Han dynasty that was capable of seeing through the secrets of the heavens, only the union of Tianwu and the man in her destiny would be able to get rid of the calamity she'll face at the age of 30. City Governor, I know this Tianwu told me before, but, according to my understanding of innate spirit bodies, the fire spirit body possesses the fire spirit body. Tianwu possesses the fire spirit body, and there are only two ways to avoid the calamity at the age of 30. Duan Lingtian said slowly. The first is to find the possessor of the water spirit body or ice spirit body and unite with Tianwu. The second is to allow Tianwu to step into the void transformation stage before the age of 30, and use the strength of a void transformation stage expert to suppress the fire spirit energy that erupts at the age of 30. Duan Lingtian spoke in a methodical manner, and it caused Feng Wudao to be unable to refrain from frowning. After a short while, Feng Wudao's brows eased up. "What you said makes sense. But innate spirit bodies are extremely rare existences. In the history of the Dark Han dynasty, the appearance of the last possessor of an innate spirit body can be traced back to 1,000 years ago. How could it be easy to find the possessor of the water spirit body or ice spirit body? Moreover, how do you know you don't possess the water spirit body or ice spirit body? According to my knowledge, many possessors of innate spirit bodies only awakened when they were close to the age of 30. As Feng Wudao spoke up to hear, he looked at Duan Lingtian. "Perhaps you're one of these concealed innate spirit bodies." Duan Lingtian froze, then laughed bitterly. Possessors of innate spirit bodies are extremely rare. How could there be such a coincidence? Coincidence? Feng Wudao said indifferently. "Then I want to ask you, for the sake of Wu Er's destiny, I came to Phoenix Nest City in advance and prepared for a few years. Why did you just happen to appear at this moment? Moreover, since you're from the south, you've also come for the sake of the soul transformation fruit my grandmother left behind as Wu Er's dowry. Don't you think all of this is too coincidental?" Feng Wudao replied with a question. Duan Lingtian was speechless. This was indeed a coincidence that was bizarre. Duan Lingtian sighed. "All right. I'll take it that I'm the possessor of the water spirit body or ice spirit body that hasn't awakened. But City Governor, don't you think it's too rash to make me marry Tianwu so abruptly? You don't know anything about my character, background, or family background. Aren't you afraid that Tianwu will suffer if she follows me? You dare!" Feng Wudao abruptly shouted out explosively, and a shapeless wave of air swept out in all directions, causing the tables and chairs in the hall to shake as if an earthquake had occurred. Duan Lingtian secretly broke out in cold sweat. Being strong meant being awesome. Just a casual shout was enough to shake the earth and shake the mountains. "Father, don't scare elder brother Duan." Feng Tianwu's beautiful brows knit together as she spoke with a slightly unhappy tone. Feng Wudao restrained the aura on his body and sighed. They all say that girls side with their husbands, and it's really like this. You haven't even married him. Yet you're already protecting him. Father, what nonsense are you talking about? Feng Tianwu's beautiful face flushed red as if blood would drip out from it. At the same time, she snuck a glance at Duan Lingtian, and when she noticed that Duan Lingtian was looking at her as well, she lowered her head in embarrassment. Duan Lingtian was astounded. It could be said that he and Feng Tianwu had gotten to know each other through a fight. But now, he was able to discern that Feng Tianwu seemed to have feelings for him. What's going on? He was unable to wrap his head around it. Could it be that my charm is really so great? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.